This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, we will be talking about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness with Cat Voleur. But first, it's time for Donna and I to talk about what we've been up to in the last week. Welcome back to the show, Donna.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
Good. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. If you can tell, I have kind of a froggy throat. I don't know what's going
Oh,
on, but hopefully it sounds okay.
it sounds fine to me. I haven't noticed. Well, so what you said we talked off there. You said you got a few things. I've got a few things. So why don't you go ahead and start with yours? What's your first thing this week?
So, the first thing this week, I don't know if you've heard, but you probably have because you're probably a nerd like I am. But Netflix has shown us a peek of the new Fear Street series that's going to be coming out. Have you
Did
seen
not
it?
see the peak yet. I need to.
So it's
I
not a teaser trailer or anything. It was just a picture, but it was enough to
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was just enough to make me go, okay, I'm so in. So this one is going to be Fear Street Prom
Prom
Queen.
night. Yeah, prom queen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cannot wait to see
Let's
this because I
see.
know it looks very 80s or 90s. I'm not sure
Yes, it
what time
said it
period
was
it's
set
in.
in the 80s again, I think.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really want to see this one. No release date, but I'm assuming it's going to be around October because that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Um, but I wasn't a big fan of the R.L. Stein Fear Street books or anything, but after seeing
Yeah.
the first Fear Street trilogy, now I'm kind of hooked. So I really want to see this.
Yeah, I what was I gonna say? I liked the fear I did the R.L. Stein and all that stuff kind of happened. I guess it was in the 80s. I didn't realize it was in the 80s when it was coming out, but I think I heard more of it more about it in the 90s.
Right.
People were talking a lot about the Fear Street stuff and everything. And so I didn't get into them because I had already, like, by the time that I started really getting into horror books and stuff like that, I
Hmm.
almost immediately went to Stephen King. So it was like I didn't really need to go backwards into like teen
Right.
stuff. I was already like in the hardcore Stephen King shit. So so it was kind of already like, I guess R.L. Stein was more 90s, right? And then
He was
like
more
Christopher
90s, like
Pike was the one that was in the 80s.
yeah, he was more 90s, which
Yeah.
my growing up, I just the Goosebumps series I liked
Goosebumps,
watching
yeah.
just because they were kind of cute, scary story for kids,
Yeah.
but I never really got into reading the Fear Street novels. And so after seeing that trilogy, and of course when the trilogy was coming out, people were like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
going to be terrible, blah blah blah."
That
And it
shit
was
was great.
fantastic. I
Yeah.
enjoyed every single one of those trilogies that was in
Yeah.
every single time period. It was great.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so this one I'm a little excited about just because
Yeah.
I hope it has the same kind of enthusiasm that we got from the first set.
I hope so. Yeah, definitely. That's my hope too, is it's as good, if not better, than what we already got from
Yeah,
the Fear Street stuff that's been on Netflix already. So yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, this week I saw again three movies at the theater.
Woohoo.
One was a re-release, but the other two were new. So I'll go ahead and start with the first new one that I watched on Tuesday night. I watched Boy Kills World.
Oh my God,
Um,
how good was that?
it was so good. It is so my jam, because it's silly and stupid and super action packed with like blood and gore, and like it's just like it was like the perfect action flick. And here's the thing, Bill Skarsgård, he's gonna be a new, like a good new action flick dude. He's been in some other action movies. Like everybody thinks of him as horror, but he's transitioning into this new action dude. So I think that's awesome because he was
It
in
looks
John Wick 4
fantastic.
also, and so yeah, he was really really, really good in this. I
Plus,
have,
this one has your girl in it,
yeah, Jessica
Jessica.
Rothe. Yeah,
I
yeah,
had to throw
no,
that out there because I know you love that.
yes, Happy Death Day. So excited to see her in this. It was great, and she's a great character in this too. Um, yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's got them. It's got Charlton Copley in it. It's
Mara
Famke.
Weaving's in
Uh,
it.
no,
Famke Janssen, I think.
Famke Janssen's in. Samara Weaving's not in it. Um,
What?
yeah, I didn't. At least I didn't see her anywhere in there. Um,
I could have sworn I read that somewhere, but no, that's okay.
maybe she was originally in the role that Jessica Rothe got. Maybe that's what it was.
That sucks.
But yeah, yeah, I love Samara Weaving, so it would have been cool to
And then
see
you
her in it.
also
But yeah,
have uh what's his name? H. John
yeah,
Benjamin.
H.
He's going
Sean
to
Benjamin as the voice of Bill Skarsgård's character. Yeah.
He's so great. Just I
Oh
can just
man.
hear him in my head because of Archer. That's all I hear
Yes.
is that
Yeah.
voice.
Yes. Yeah. I like Archer. I've never watched. I've tried to watch Bob's Burgers, but I have not been able to get into that show.
It's
But
cute. It's not my thing, but it is
yeah,
cute.
yeah, exactly. But Archer. I enjoyed Archer, although I'm only like halfway through the series right now. Um, but yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. If you like action movies, like hard R action movies, you'll like this movie because it's got a lot of violence and a lot of bloody gore and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah, that's right up my alley. I
oh
definitely
yeah,
want to see that.
totally. All right, but yeah, that was my Tuesday night. What else you got?
Um, so the other thing I have is, and I know you've probably heard this too. So I'm always butchering people's names. Panos Cosmatos.
Oh yeah, yeah, Panos. Yeah, I'm not. I think it's Cosmatos, but I could be wrong. Also, I don't.
I think you're right because I literally I'm notorious for butchering people's names. Like I will fucking name up in a heartbeat, and I really
Yeah,
don't care because y'all know who the fuck I'm talking about.
right.
But
Just
he
say
directed
Panos.
Mandy.
Yeah,
How about that?
yeah,
We'll just say
yeah.
that.
There you go.
So he's gonna
And
direct the '80s kind of themed vampire flick, Flesh of the Gods.
yeah, yeah, with Kristen Stewart and who's the other person?
My boyfriend Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oscar Isaac. Yeah,
And I'm a little too hyped because I haven't seen '80s vampires since The Hunger, a vampire couple. Not counting The Only Lovers Left Alive because I don't believe they were in the '80s. I think they were like
yeah,
modern. But interested because I want to see the wardrobe. I want to hear the soundtrack. I love
yeah,
Mandy. I'm interested to see the color schemes. I'm a little hyped to see this.
yeah,
And Kristen Stewart's been on a roll lately, man. She is really she's out here doing a lot of really interesting movies. So I
yeah.
can only imagine.
I wouldn't say I'm a fan of hers. I've never been a big fan of hers. I mean, I think she's choosing some interesting roles, though. I think she's one of those actresses that I can kind of give or take. I've never been that big of a fan of hers, so I'm like,
I didn't like
okay,
her
like,
in Twilight. I thought Twilight was like, no, and
ah,
that made me not like her. But I really am liking the trajectory she's going with these really
I,
odd movies she's picking.
I thought she was good in Underwater, and she was better in Love Lies Bleeding, for sure. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it. I mean, again, I didn't love Mandy. I thought it was okay.
Hmm.
But I liked what he was doing in that. I think the aesthetic, and everything. So I'm excited for the idea of it for sure.
I'm just excited to see Oscar Isaac in
Oh yeah.
something that's a little bit against his type, I guess. Um,
I don't know. Does he really have a type? He's all like, I'm honestly like, I've been watching other movies and he's been in all these other movies recently, and I'm like, dude is all over the place in his
Actually, you're right
performances. Like
because you
he's
watched
actually really good.
Drive and then Ex Machina
Drive, Ex
and
Machina, and then like
Dune. Yeah, he really is.
Dune. What else did I see him in recently too?
Moon Knight. I mean, y'all just
Moon
talked
Knight.
about
Yeah, I
Moon
just
Knight.
re yeah. Thank you. I was like, there was something else big that I was.
But I mean, he's so
Yeah,
great, and obviously in the Star Wars films, and no,
yeah,
I'm thinking, yeah, and there was something else I was going to say. I already said Drive, but there was something else I just saw him in recently, and I was like, he's so good in this. I feel like
Yeah.
he could have. He's almost like a younger Al Pacino, but then you see all the other movies he's he's doing. You're like, no, Al Pacino would never pick these movies.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
gonna throw it out there. I don't like Al Pacino as that actor.
Oh, I don't either.
I think he's really one note. He's like Jack Nicholson to me, where they're
Yes,
like really one note like actors who play the same kind of character each
the
time.
same character over
And
and
so like
over.
it's fine when you're okay with that character. Like watching him in Heat, I was like, okay, I kind of get it. It's fine. I'll take him in
But he's
Heat.
like subdued, and then he has a rage filled moment, and that's every movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, really, I'm not trying.
No, no, it's true. It's absolutely true. And that's why I'm
I
just like, it's the same fucking character. And so I'm like, there's people who have like Oscar Isaac, that dude has range. Like
That
that's
dude
definitely,
really, he
yeah,
really does. But
yeah,
I'm interested because I just want to see
yeah.
how they're going to look and how they're going to dress, and that whole 80s vibe.
Oh
I'm
hell yeah.
excited to see that. And that's a time period that will forever be etched in my brain because I was a teen in the
Yeah.
80s.
We
So I
grew up then,
really,
yeah.
yeah, so I'm really invested, and I'm kind of excited for this one.
Well, it's nice to see it when people do it in a good way too. Like, we were talking previously about what's it called? Totally Killer. Um
Oh, yes.
and how that captured some of the weirdness of the 80s in a way that I hadn't seen a movie do before, about how blasé everybody was in the 80s
Everybody was in the 80s.
about shit like today you would be like what like you what like her going in to go get like a news like like to join the school and everything like that, and they were just like, yeah, here's your schedule, and she's like, don't
You
need
don't want to talk to my
CID or
parents
talk to my
or
parents or anything.
anything.
They're like, nope,
You don't need
here you
any
go.
ID.
No, and that's like it literally like that's how funny that was. Somebody actually grew up in the 80s who was like writing that, because there's no way anybody would even think about putting that into a movie and how absurd that was. And so it's just like, love that when somebody can actually like and don't get me wrong, I don't have a problem with somebody having an idealized version of the 80s. That's fine too. I love that. And just like a cool
Mhm.
neon soaked version of the 80s. I'm with that totally 100%. But I love when somebody
We
can
all
point
know it
out
was
the
all wood
weird shit.
paneled everything.
Oh yeah, wood paneled and orange, burnt orange, or baby shit yellow.
Yeah, we didn't have the cool shit that you see in these
Oh my
80s
god. No.
movies. I'm sorry. It's just the whole thought of it. You're
Yeah.
100% correct. Oh my
There's
goodness.
that picture on the internet. It's like you grew up in the 80s and it's like this neon bedroom with all kinds of cool shit. And it's
No.
like, no, I grew up in the 80s and there's like the wood panel and the crap and
Think
everything
more like
else.
your house was like the
Yeah.
inside of a log cabin, but we don't know why
Right.
anybody
Right.
would want it to be.
So stupid.
Ah,
Oh my God. It's so funny. All right. Well, that being said, yes, I am excited to check that out. Flesh of the Gods. So it sounds interesting. And I'll definitely go check it out. I'll definitely watch it when it comes out.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so speaking of 80s sort of, I on Wednesday night I went to a 45th anniversary re-release, so technically 1979, of Alien, the first Alien movie.
And
Um
what you think on the big
and
screen.
so I mean it was good. It was good on the big screen. I Here's the thing. I've never been a huge Alien fan. Like
Boo.
the whole the whole franchise as a whole has never really grabbed me
Boo.
per se. But here's
I'm
the thing.
I'm booing
Here's
you on your own show.
shush. Um, but here's the thing. I've only seen them probably once before, any of them. Like, and I think I've watched all but Covenant so far. And like I said,
Oh
I
my
think I've only
goodness.
ever seen them one time through. So it's definitely a franchise that I want to explore more. But I haven't done that. Look, I'm more of a Predator fan. I
That's
like
okay.
Predator. And when it comes down to Alien versus Predator, I'm always going to side with the Predator. Um, Predator just looks cooler.
I mean, technically, I should side with the Predator, the whole black thing, because they're always down with black folk. But
Yeah.
I, but Alien is just that's my jam, and it's fine that it's not your jam. But I'm glad
No,
that you at least enjoyed it on the
I
big
did.
screen.
I did. I enjoyed it. It was interesting to see it on the big screen. There's a lot to like about it. There's more, and this is what I told my son too. I said I like Alien, but I like what it did more than even what happened in the movie, because the movie's good, don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
But I think what it did best was start a franchise that then was able to go off in all these different weird,
Yep.
interesting directions. And I kind of like almost the anthology aspect of each of the subsequent things. Now, again, I've only watched them once, so I need to go back through and rewatch them all and everything like
Yes, you
that.
do.
But I remember really liking Aliens, and Aliens seems to be the one most people tend to like the most. It's like, Cameron took the world that Ridley Scott created or Dan O'Bannon created, and expanded it and fleshed it out better in a way that the first movie didn't quite do.
Well,
Um,
plus you also get the added bonus of it being an action horror movie, and so
right,
there are more aliens and higher body count. So it's like,
right, exactly.
who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. Now I did like how this one was felt very much like a slasher.
Hmm.
It's very much the alien just picks off everybody one by one. And so it was fun to watch it for that aspect of it. And to take that away from it. It
Right.
was interesting to look back on it. I didn't catch this, and I it's funny because you would think I would have, but like I didn't catch all the basically the super sexual imagery that's all in this movie. um Excuse me. But yeah, no, apparently, and I'm not surprised, being that Giger was the production, like basically
Hmm.
all of his artwork was used for the production design. But yeah, no, it's a very sexually tinged movie. That I read somebody's review later and was like, oh, okay, yeah. And now I see it, all that, but I didn't see it as I was watching it. I was also a little tired. So I just I glazed over a couple of times when it was in the slow moments. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, and this is probably not the best night to have gone and watched this, but but it was the only time it was out. So I had to go watch it. But yeah, no, it was good. And normally I go to the movies with just Katrina, but
Right.
Harrison actually joined us for that one because he's a big
Oh, that was
Alien fan.
nice.
Yeah. So he's a big fan of the movie. So we may be talking about that on a future episode. So what
I
else you
call
got for me?
dibs on that one. I want to be there when you talk to him about that. Just putting it in there now,
There
mister.
you go.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about was a director that both you and I really like, and he's about to do a new, possibly in the talks to start a new Exorcist film for
Oh yes,
Blumhouse.
I did hear
Yeah,
about this.
Mike Flanagan. I
Mike
cannot wait.
Flanagan. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
That
Is there
dude
anything
cannot
that
do.
man can't do?
Yeah, he doesn't do anything wrong. Now look, I'm fully on board with him doing an Exorcist movie, 100%. Like, give
Hmm.
him what he wants. Let him do what he wants.
Yes,
But
please.
as long as it doesn't take away from him doing the damn Dark Tower series he's supposed to be doing for Amazon. I have waited decades for a Dark Tower series to be done right. And now we finally have the perfect person to pull this off.
This is true.
I don't want them screwing it up. I need Mike Flanagan to do the Dark Tower
I
right.
don't think it'll screw it up. I think, just because
No,
they're
he
only in
won't. He won't screw it
talks.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, I think they're
yeah,
just in talks about it. And
right.
so there's going to be probably a good year or two before we even get anything. You know what I
Oh yeah,
mean?
for sure. Well,
So,
I don't know. They may be trying to fast track that so they can get it out, because Blumhouse, what was it? Blumhouse or Universal paid like $400 million for the rights to The Exorcist.
oh
So they're
shit.
going to need some return on their investment. And since
Yeah,
Exorcist
you're
Believer
right.
didn't do that well, they're going to be like, yeah, we need somebody to come in and
Clean the
do
shit
this
up.
really good. Yeah. So, and I mean, they made the smartest choice in getting Flanagan, though. I mean, that dude, man, everything he touches is just great.
Yeah, there's
So
nothing he can't do. I will literally be a fan forever and ever.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just I cannot help it.
Well,
And he
speak
also knows how to put his wife in movies and do
yes.
it correctly.
Yes,
So
yeah, because he, like we mentioned, I think last week. No, you know what? That was I was talking to Violet, and we mentioned people putting their wives and stuff. So we I think that's what's great about Flanagan is that Kate Siegel is used properly in every project he does because sometimes she's a main character, sometimes she's
and
a
sometimes
side
she's
character,
not.
sometimes she's
Exactly.
just a fucking cameo. So,
Exactly.
and that's what's great about it is like he knows where to put her in at the right moments. And she does such a good job at doing whatever she's doing. Um, but yeah, I would say anybody who hasn't seen it yet, please go watch Follow the House of Usher. So
Oh my
good.
gosh. It
Like
is so good.
I that is my like everybody hypes up Midnight Mass, and don't get me wrong, that is a
Midnight Mass is
fantastic.
great.
It's
Oh my
so
gosh.
great. It's
But that
so
Fall
great.
House of
But
Usher
Follow the
though.
House of Usher, I think, is his best work so far.
Yeah, I think so
So,
too. I burned through that like
oh, me
so
too.
fast because I
Oh,
had to know what
so
was going to
good.
happen. I mean, you
Yeah.
know the story, but I had to see what was going to happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No,
Yeah, we're
it
gonna have to talk
was
about that alone. We really are gonna have to do a TV
mm-hmm.
podcast together and just
Yeah.
talk about episodes because
Yeah.
that was a masterpiece.
When we get off air, there were a couple other ones that I wanted to throw at you. So um so we'll definitely talk more about
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
But yes, I also saw the other day that somebody asked him about Hush because there's no physical release for Hush
There
because
isn't,
he
and I want one so
he
bad.
put it on because he had originally made a deal with Netflix, and Netflix put it out there and had it up there for years while he was their golden boy. But then when he decided to take his stuff elsewhere, it the option on it lapsed also. And so he has the rights back to it. He has all the rights back to it. There's possibly news coming soon about either physical or it being on digital. Hopefully both. Hopefully it's coming to streaming somewhere,
Right.
but hopefully it's also coming out with a really cool disc also because I would love to grab that.
I
So
would definitely want that. It's one of my favorite things to tell people about, and it's if you've never seen, there's a movie back in the '60s called Wait Until Dark.
mm.
Um, it's a very similar kind of suspensefulness, except in this movie, it's a blind woman who has to fight off three attackers who are
Oh,
coming
okay.
into her home. And it's such a great movie. It's like got all of this. It's just like Hush. It's got that slow kind of build up, and then that tension, and then you have that breakdown where they're actually at each other's throat. I mean,
Yeah,
so pairing those two together, like two disabled women who just kick everybody's ass.
that's
It's like
cool.
the best thing ever. It's like an ice cream sundae. I
Yeah.
cannot tell you.
Well, and speaking of
Um,
Midnight Mass, the character in there played by Kate Siegel, she's the author of Midnight Mass.
She
So,
is. If you saw it
so
on her key on her laptop, she was
yeah.
working on that. And um,
He,
yeah, I'm a big champion of physical media. Just
oh,
collect as
same.
much as you can because the streaming stuff is nice, but once
Oh
again, once
yeah.
they pull it or they make it to where you can't have it on your server, fuck all of that. I want a
Yeah.
tangible in my hand copy.
hmm Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like I've got hundreds of movies on Vudu, and I champion uh buying stuff on Vudu as well. Like if you need to get something, sometimes that's a really good option to
Right.
do it. Like there's tons of movies that I have on there that I don't really care about having on physical. It's great. If I had it on physical, it'd be great, but I only have so much room.
Hmm.
So I have to be very choosy about what I do get on physical. So I'm choosing the most important to me. Um, and um, so typically, um, when I get stuff on Vudu, it's the other stuff, and I usually wait until it's on sale. So
Hmm.
because they have really good sales. Because $5 for a digital copy, sure, I'll do that. You know,
Yeah.
and then that also prevents issues where so we found out there was a show I think on Paramount Plus like Rise of the Pink Ladies
Hmm.
which was like a prequel to the Grease movie.
Grease. Mhm.
And my daughter loved that show, and then they pulled it from Paramount Plus, but they actually had it for sale on Vudu, so we bought it. So that way we still have a copy because they didn't even have a physical release for it either. So there was no possible way to watch that. And then she found out that it was actually on Vudu, so we bought it so that she could continue to watch it. So, and that's the thing too, is like always check something like Vudu or someplace else that sells that stuff. And don't get me wrong, they could eventually at some time pull that stuff. Now, my experience has been is that sometimes you can buy something on there that they later on will take off of being able to
Mhm.
buy. They'll take off of being able to buy. But if you've already bought it, you still get to keep it. They don't. They've done pretty good about not taking away your access of that.
Right. Yeah. That's what we
So
ended up having to do with the FX had the show called Atlanta that
yeah,
Donald
yeah,
Glover, and they don't have any physical copies of it, so we just bought all of the digital copies because we want to watch
yeah,
it, but we don't always want to have to go to Hulu to watch it. I mean,
right,
it's a pain in my ass. I really just I want physical copies of
yeah,
everything, and I get it. I only have so much space too, but there are
yeah,
some things that once it's gone, it's gone. Like Hush was just so infuriating because
yeah.
I would tell people to watch it, and they go, "Where can I watch it? Because it's not available. Where is it?"
Yeah. Well, it was like the movie Barbarian came out. It was only ever available on digital. So I bought it
Digital.
on digital. It's never been available physically through normal means. There's bootleggers who put it out. But it so I bought it through Vudu because I was like, I'm not gonna not have this movie in my
Right.
collection. And so, not because I like Barbarian. I think it's a great movie. It's weird,
Yeah,
but
it's a
I like
really
it.
good movie.
But
Love that movie.
yeah. But yeah, so just yeah, check Vudu, but buy physical if there's something you really, really want to keep in your collection. I just read a really good article about longevity of discs because there's a question about how long these discs will last. Because, like, it's a
Hmm.
good question. Like, if you want your physical media, how long is that actually going to stick around for you?
Right.
And the conservative estimate is 10 to 20 years for a lot of that stuff. But if you keep it in a nice, cool, dry area, it'll probably last a lot longer than that. Especially if you don't use it too much. Like, here's the thing: I buy a lot of discs. I don't watch a lot of
You
discs. A
don't
lot
watch
of
them
uh,
repeatedly, right?
no, because if I want to watch something, usually most of them come with the digital copy, and I always redeem my digital copy. So when I want to watch it, I just do watch it through Vudu because it's a lot easier. I could just pull it up easily, watch it. Sure, it's not at the same quality as the 4K is, but it's not that much worse for my eyes because my eyes
Yeah.
are old, so it doesn't matter.
I
Um,
mean, I can do you one better. I and this is so embarrassing to say. Not really. It's a movie. The very first DVD I got it from my husband. He is a huge fan of this science fiction action flick called Kroll. I'm sure people are cringing at
oh,
Kroll.
Kroll. Yeah, I've heard of that.
So that DVD, standard DVD, it has to be over 20 years old. I mean, it's old.
Yeah, yeah,
And it still plays, but you know why? Because we don't watch it that often. Like, maybe once
yeah,
every 10 years that goes
yeah.
into the thing and we watch it. But um, I just even that fact of only lasting 10 or 20 years, like you said, we're not going to watch it ad nauseum. It has to be like the
Right,
thing for me to watch it like repeatedly
right,
on a regular. And I've got like 4 or 5 different versions of that movie, so I'll be fine. I will be
right,
perfectly fine. That's my apocalypse movie, okay? If something
right.
happens, I've got 4 copies of the thing that will be coming with me in the bunker. Maybe one of you guys can join. I don't know. If you like
Yeah.
the thing, you can come in.
All
That's
right.
all I'm gonna say.
Dibs.
Um, so I feel like you had one more movie, or
I
was that
do.
all
I
of
do.
them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, no. All that being said, buy physical when you can. There's lots of places you can buy it if you want to. You get it cheap and easy. Amazon's probably the best way to go. But there are other places that are just as good, if not better, in a lot of ways. Diabolic DVD is one of those. They have pretty much everything you can get, including foreign releases. Um, and remember, 4K is region free always. So if you get
Mm-hmm.
it, so if you do, if you can upgrade to 4K, because you can get stuff. I just got a bunch of Second Sight films. It's a UK based place. It's kind of like Scream Factory, kind of like that. They put
Mm-hmm.
out really good collector's edition
They
stuff.
do have a lot of good additions.
Yeah, I just got Drive, The Guest, The Witch, and It Follows, all on 4K. There, and since 4K is region free, I don't got to worry about it. And then I also got a region free Blu-ray of Lake Mungo from them. So
Lake Mungo is so creepy.
yeah, it's so creepy. Um, so yeah, so I was just like, I got to get all those. So yeah, that's what's nice about 4K is like you can get 4K from any country and it'll still play in your regular 4K player because it's 4K is a region free uh, disc always. So, anyway, that being said, yes, I did watch one more movie on Thursday night. I got to see The Fall Guy, which was a ton of fun.
It
Um,
looks really
Oh
fun.
my gosh, it's even more fun than you see in the trailers. There's so much going on in this movie. It's, Ryan Gosling is charming and funny. Um it's just every like and I saw an article that says that he's transitioned away from like psychologically like rough type of characters stuff like the
Hmm.
characters he kind of played in Drive and Only God Forgives um that so he's trying to play more light characters because it's what's best for him and his family. And so I was like, that's cool. Like that's fine. I think that, seeing these characters he's been playing, people like movies in like Nice Guys and Fall Guy and Barbie and all these other movies. I like that a lot. I like that work that he's doing now, even more than the stuff he was doing in the past. And don't get me wrong, I love Drive. But this movie is just a lot of fun. David Leitch is the director. He's a former stuntman himself.
Hmm.
He was one of the co-directors of the original John Wick, and he's since gone on and done Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, and Bullet Train. So all super great action flicks. If you love,
I think
you know,
that's one thing I really like about it is that he has such an eye for doing the stunts and then
yes,
also has such an eye, he knows how to make these comedic timing moments are always
yeah,
just so great.
yeah, no, it's
I
great. And he's
mean,
also produced the movies Nobody and Violent Night, which are also big faves of mine. So, like,
right.
even when he doesn't direct it, he's got a really strong hand in these other really good action flicks. So, like, and that's the thing. Like, if you love action movies, I think you owe it to yourself to check some of this out, especially The Fall Guy, because it really is a loving ode to the stunt profession,
Yeah.
um, directed by somebody who, you know, lived and worked in that world for
I'm
so
actually
long before
surprised
he
it took them
transitioned.
so long to make a movie about this, because it was
Yeah,
a TV series in the 80s and,
yeah,
obviously people my age and your age, we remember the show, but, you know, I'm actually glad that it did take this long because we needed a stunt person we needed
yeah.
that perspective to make this movie.
Well, and it
Now I heard my boyfriend Winston Duke is in this movie.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
have a
He's
lot of
he's
boyfriends.
he's yeah, you really do. Um, he he's in it. He's not in it a ton. There's a good sequence
That's
with him
okay.
and Ryan Gosling in it, but he's in it. He's in it pretty well. There's definitely a couple scenes that I know were in the trailers that were not in the movie, and that was kind
I
of
hate
like
when they do that.
I hate when they do that because there was a couple of really funny moments. Um, and I get it, they cut for time or whatever. So it's not a huge miss, but yeah, no, it's such a fun movie. Like it's so many good people are in it, and have so many great sequences. They actually during the production of this, they actually did a world record. They did a what's called a what is it, a cannon roll,
Hmm.
which is where the cannon like it shoots out a cannon below the car, and it makes the car roll, and they did it. The car rolled 8.5 times, which is, I guess, the most that's ever happened.
Get out.
Yeah. So, and they show it on screen, and they actually mentioned it a couple of times in the movie. They're like, oh, 8.5 times, blah blah blah. And so like, and then in the end credits though, you get to see behind the scenes footage too. So it's really cool of like the actual stunts being done and stuff. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. Um, and actually, what I did catch, I think just last night or the night before, on Peacock, there's a series right now called Action, and it's a behind the scenes look at Fall Guy and what was the other thing? Violent Night, and stuff. And it's like a show about David Leitch and stunt people and stuff. So it's like I think he's a producer on the show or something like that. So it's like a documentary program, like series
Oh,
um about stunt people and all that. And so I was like, oh, that's a great companion piece to come out right at the same time as the Fall Guy. So I haven't watched any of it yet, but I'm gonna check it out soon.
yeah, that sounds kind of interesting. Now I kind of want
Yeah,
to go and see that myself.
yeah, yeah. It looked fun from the trailer I saw. They even get Keanu Reeves to talk a bit about it because like Keanu Reeves and Ryan Gosling, they're huge people like who champion stunt people. So all the marketing for like a lot of the marketing for Fall Guy has been Ryan Gosling doing stunt type stuff, you know.
Hmm.
So it's been interesting to see. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely a lot of fun. Go check it out. There's an adorable love story that goes through it between him and Emily Blunt's character. So it's really a lot of fun.
So it's something for the ladies and also for the men. That's what.
Exactly.
I mean, I would assume the men would be the enough for me, but I do love me a love story.
I do
So
too. It was really
yeah.
cute and adorable. So I liked it a lot. So I liked all aspects of the movie. So,
Well, I'm
but
glad you
yeah,
said that it was good. I mean, I knew it would be. It
yeah,
really kind of looked like it was going to be a lot of fun. So glad to
well,
hear that.
yeah, and I'm really using that A list to watch all these movies. My 3 a week because next week, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Ooh.
Yeah, um,
Have you seen the marketing they've done for that Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
Have you seen the marketing that they've done for the new Planet of the Apes
I'm
movie?
not sure. I've seen
So
trailers,
they've
but
Yeah, they've had a bunch of I guess people dressed up as the
oh
apes on
yes,
horseback in
yeah,
California.
riding into different cities. Yeah,
That's
so
pretty clever. It's kind of
yeah.
cute.
I heard that there when it comes to video, that there's actually going to be like on the disc with the regular movie, there's actually going to be a version of the movie, which is a really weird extra to put in, but there's going to be a version of the movie without the CGI apes. It's just going to be the people, like
That's going
the
to be odd.
actors. Yeah, I was like, and I get it in a way because they want to showcase like the actors doing the acting, because it is used with people
Right.
in motion capture suits, being the apes and everything.
Right.
So I'm like, that's cool, but at the same time, like a full version of the movie, I don't know that we need that. Like maybe a
I
document,
don't
like maybe
Who
a
asked
half
for
hour
that?
documentary on that. I don't know. It's a little weird, but I'm like, all right,
I mean, if
that's
your name's on the
fine.
credits, then your name's on the credit. You're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, like I said, it'd be something to kind of watch, and I don't think I could watch the whole movie that way though, because it's just
No.
weird. Um, but yeah, no, but it looks like a really good movie. All the trailers I've seen from it, which I've seen quite a few trailers for it because we go to the movies a lot now. I think I go to the movies now as an A-lister than I did even um, when my daughter worked at the theater. So, which is crazy.
Hey, you're getting your money's worth out of it.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. But yeah, that's all I had for this week that I can think of. I did finish um the current season of Chucky, which is really good. People are not watching that, and you are a Child's Play / Chucky fan. Watch the series because it's really good. Continues the whole mythos of everything, while going in crazy, wild new directions. I've said it before that I think this is, what Ryan Murphy tries to do
Hmm.
on American Horror Story, like with the campiness and the weird and everything like that, and the horror and stuff like that. I think Don Mancini is doing even better on Chucky, so and succeeding better at it. So in terms of me continuing to want to watch it, so
I think I need to just start watching it. Maybe that'll be my summer project to
there
go
you
and
go,
watch all of the seasons.
definitely. All right. Well, again, that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
No, that was it. I only brought those little nuggets of wisdom this week. I'll try to bring more next week.
Yeah, well, go and watch or go and follow Donna wherever Donna is at, and go listen to her podcast, Donna the Dead. Um, Donna, do you want to tell people where they can find you?
I mean, pretty much anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find Donna underscore the THA underscore dead as disco. And then I'm always on Instagram because that's my home base. I'm sometimes on Twitter and never on Discord. Don't hate me, Robert. I will try to get there.
It's all right.
But
I'm
I do have
I'm
one.
I'm hardly on that one myself. But yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, that's all we have for this week. So everybody, stay creepy. On today's episode, we'll be talking about the MCU Phase 4 movie, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Joining me for this episode is Cat Voleur. Cat is the co-host of the podcasts Slasher Radio and the Nick Effin Woo Cage cast. I always almost mess that up every time. She's also the author of the novels Revenge Arc and The Desert Island Game, and the editor of the upcoming anthology Sincerely Departed. Welcome back to the show, Cat.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always good to have you on, and especially because I think this is the third or fourth time you've come on to save my bacon at the last minute. So you're always really good for that. I was always like this time I was like, okay, I really need somebody. I was like, please let Cat be available.
I was
You,
available.
yeah, you were, and especially because we're doing this late at night and everything. So it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, fingers crossed, and it worked out. So it's really, really good. Thank you again for coming on and again saving my baking because my daughter was supposed to be on this episode, and she's been between work and school, and she's trying to catch up on some last minute school stuff and everything. She just needed to put this aside for now and focus on that, and which I totally understand. I'm not going to go, no, you got to be on my podcast. She's got to do her
Responsible
homework.
parenting.
Yeah.
You be on my podcast.
Right.
No, it actually worked out really well for me. If it had been like a week later, I would have been on the road. And
Oh no.
last week I was also stuck at work and kind of trapped behind on stuff. So this came in at like the perfect
Perfect moment.
time for me
Yay.
to look, available and very heroic saving the day.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's been at least 3 or 4 times that I can think of that you have like literally come in at the last moment to like scooch in to replace a guest that couldn't make it. So it's worked
We're
out.
also I'm hoping that like at some point in the future I get to do this for like more horror stuff. We're getting to the
Right.
point in the MCU where it's like this is around the point where I tapped out.
Right.
So unless
Yeah.
someone drops out for Love and Thunder, like this might be my MCU appearance.
Yeah, no, I already have somebody for Love and Thunder and they're locked in. I'm actually doing that recording tomorrow afternoon.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I had to watch these pretty much back to back with each other. So but yeah, no, it's I think I'm hopefully won't have to tap you again, but I do have some open slots, so maybe I'll have to get you to watch something you haven't watched yet.
Oh.
But definitely, I definitely want you on for more of the horror stuff as well, because I don't think I've had you on enough of that yet. You've been on the geek side of things quite a bit, actually. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, but yeah, let's talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. This is, like I
Right.
said, Phase 4. This is following pretty directly after the events of both WandaVision and um, Spider-Man No Way Home. So it kind of there's threads that get picked up from both of those in a way, not so much No Way Home, but a lot more of WandaVision and just continuing Doctor Strange's storyline as well. But this is the biggest best thing about this is that Sam Raimi, it's his first appearance in the MCU as a director, which is
Yes.
super exciting. Me being a huge Evil Dead fan, I'm glad to see him come back and do something in a horror vein. because there's a lot of horror stuff going on in this movie.
I was super psyched when they announced Sam Raimi because I also am a huge Evil Dead fan. That's
Yay.
what I think of when I think of Sam Raimi.
Yes.
And I didn't put this together until after like the initial excitement about Evil Dead had kind of worn off.
Right.
But Sam Raimi is also in a large part the reason why I got into the MCU, because I used to not like what got me started reading Marvel comics was Spider-Man, the Spider-Man movie.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's funny. Yeah, no, and that's what's cool too, is that he's done the horror and he's also done the comic book side of things too. Because I mean, he
yeah.
was the impetus, like he was one of the architects of like the better comic book movies that started coming out in the early 2000s. So between his
Yes.
Spider-Man trilogy and the X-Men movies and stuff like that, it was like, okay, let's finally take some comic book characters and make them serious enough to for people to take them seriously. And so that's that's what's great about him coming in to do Doctor Strange now, is he's got that arc of his own career going from the horror into the superhero. And he kind of already melded that in the movie Darkman,
Oh yeah.
in the 90s. And then so he already kind of had that experience. But yeah, no, Doctor Strange was an entirely new thing. And I'm sure he put some of his own little touches in there, which I know he did. But it definitely wasn't written by him or his brother Ivan, who co-writes a lot of his movies and stuff, especially the Evil Dead and horror stuff that he does. So it's and I think, and I should have looked this up and made notes earlier. Uh, but I think the guy who wrote this, I know his name is Michael Waldron. I think that he was the one who wrote for, yeah, he created the MCU Disney Plus series Loki. So
Okay.
he already had a hand in creating and guiding the multiverse as we know it now. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm pretty sure that he is going to be involved in one of the big MCU Avengers movies down the road as well. Yes, he's supposed to be the writer on Avengers 5 and Avengers Secret Wars. So big
Okay.
big things for him in the MCU. So I did recently rewatch this, but I watched it with the commentary this time because I was like, hey,
Oh.
listening to Sam Raimi talk about stuff. But it was Sam Raimi, Michael Waldron, and a producer named Richie Palmer. They were all talking about stuff, and it wasn't like super in depth about like fully about the movie making and stuff like that. But they talked a little bit here and there about stuff that came up, and it was an interesting thing. So if anybody has the ability to listen to the commentary track, definitely do that because it's fun to listen to Raimi talk about making the movie.
It's always fun to listen to Raimi talk about making movies.
Yeah, because he just like even the other guys who he's talking with, they actually mentioned that it's like, well, you know what, I'm wrong. I watched a little special feature about Sam Raimi that people were being very complimentary about him making the movie, other people who were involved in the movie, and we're talking about just like how much he loves to make movies. And
Yeah.
that's very true. If anybody's seen any kind of documentary about the Evil Dead or anything else like that, the dude just loves making movies, which is crazy because he hasn't made very many of them in the last 20 or so years,
Yeah.
so it's like I really need people to um give him more chances to make movies. So yeah, but I think but also on the other token, he's producing a lot.
He is
Um,
producing a lot.
so I mean, he's producing the all the recent Evil Dead movies. We just got two announced for the future. Um, and he just was one of the producers on the Boy Kills World movie that just came out.
Oh, I
So
didn't even know that.
yeah, so it's pretty cool. So Yeah, he does a lot more on the producing side of things these days, which is fine. I get it. You
Yeah.
get older, you're like, I don't want to direct so much. That's kind of a pain in the ass. I'll just be the money guy. But that
Yeah, I
being
think if you
said,
have money,
yeah,
that's the way to.
right. Or know the right people to get the money to kind of facilitate it, So
Yeah.
um but yeah, no, this honestly is one of my favorites of the MCU. I know there's a lot of people who don't like this one. Um and I kind of get it. It can get complicated, and I know most people's issue is the way Wanda is handled. But
So,
I
yeah, I'm gonna
argue,
come out ahead of this real quick and say because I kind of want to disclaimer my opinion
yeah,
about this one. I've seen
okay,
this one twice, which is crazy because this was around the point where I dropped out of the MCU, and when I came out of it, I was like, I'm never watching another MCU movie again. Like my initial reaction to this was very
right,
bad.
right,
My second watch, I liked it a lot more, but I
okay,
was treating it with a much different mindset.
okay,
I was like in my first watch, I was treating this like a part of the MCU. This was the one that was gonna get me back, and it did not.
mm, okay,
But my second take, I treated it like a Sam Raimi movie where like I had a couple beers, I watched it with friends, we had
right,
popcorn. It was a fun time. And I actually my opinion of this movie, I just want to go on record real early and say that I actually do kind of like this movie. I have a lot of complaints that I'm sure are going to
okay,
come up as
all
we
right,
talk about it because I feel like it doesn't hold up to scrutiny real well,
okay,
but I feel like it can be a fun time.
right,
Like any Sam Raimi film, like you sit down, you
yeah.
watch it, you have a good time. I feel more positively about it than what I feel like it's going to sound like I do.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm probably a little bit more forgiving, probably because again, I it's the combination of it being a Sam Raimi movie. Although here's the thing. I will admit, I'm not that big of a fan of his Spider-Man movies. So they're okay and they have good moments here and there, but they don't feel like him as much as like, and don't get me wrong, there's bits and pieces that feel very much like him. But I feel like Sony kind of hampered him a lot in those as well.
I
Um,
will say with the Spider-Man movies, because that was what got me into reading
right,
Marvel comics. It was why I liked Spider-Man. It was why when Iron Man was announced, I was at the theater opening day because I was like so hyped up about it. Like
right.
I think he did a great job. I love those movies. Tobey Maguire is hashtag my Spider-Man for
Oh,
life.
no.
But um I did. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize the Sam Raimi that did Spider-Man was also the Sam Raimi that did Evil Dead.
Oh, I
Like
know
I
it.
just
They're
didn't put it
totally,
together.
yeah, yeah. And
So
and
I
and
get it.
yeah.
I kind of agree.
See, I don't. I like, and I have the differing opinion that Tobey Maguire is my least favorite Spider-Man. So, yeah,
I
but
think I do kind of wonder sometimes where it's like if I hadn't grown up with those Spider-Man
yeah,
movies, if that had not been my introduction to Spider-Man, would Tobey Maguire be my Peter Parker? But unfortunately, we'll never know.
right, right. It'll always
Because
be
he
your,
just is Peter Parker for
it'll just
me.
always be the youth pastor who's your favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Oh, it's too funny. All right. But yeah. But yeah, no, I like this movie. I like it a lot. Again, Sam Raimi gets to Sam Raimi in this one. This one feels like a Sam Raimi movie. Of course, it's not hard R rated. And he's got to keep things pulled back a little bit, but he gets to kind of do a lot with what he's given. And so I like that they gave him enough rope to be himself in this, where I feel like he didn't really get as much of that in the Spider-Man movies.
I do think he got more of that in this movie. I will say, we were actually just talking about this before we came in, where sometimes marketing can be a disservice to
Mm-hmm.
a film. I feel like Multiverse of Madness really suffered from that because while I got a lot more Sam Raimi in this movie than I got in the Spider-Man movies, I I feel like the trailer really promised me more Sam Raimi than I got. Like you can see it. There are parts where you can like see these transitions and you're like, "Oh my god, Sam Raimi is here in the room with me." Like
Yeah.
it's such a presence, but it feels tonally like they made a big deal about this is going to be the MCU's horror movie, and we're going to let
Right.
Sam Raimi do all this stuff, and it's going to be serious and dark and edgy. And I was like, okay, like I'm here for that. I think that sounds really cool. And it was a Marvel movie with like a
Right.
Sam Raimi coat of paint on it. Like it was
Right. Yeah.
cool. It was really interesting. I think all of my favorite elements pretty much came either from the performances or from Sam Raimi
Yeah.
directly, because you can see, and especially with like the monster designs
Right.
and
Oh yeah.
some of the shots, like you can really, and I love those moments so much. I do kind of wish we'd gotten more of that, which on the one hand, in retrospect, it's easy to be like, I think this was as much Sam Raimi as we were ever going to get,
Yeah. Oh
but the
yeah.
trailers just made it look like so much more.
Right. And I think maybe that's where you had the issue with it going into
Yeah.
it in that initial viewing. That makes a lot of sense, though, too, is if you had that expectation of it being Marvel's Evil Dead,
Yeah.
then going into it and you're getting it and it's not Marvel's Evil Dead, it's this not that to that level, you'd be disappointed for sure. And so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's where I didn't have that expectation. I was like, look, I would love that, but there's no way they're gonna do that yet. You know,
So, yeah, you're smarter than me because I like
I'm just older.
because again, in retrospect, it's easy to look
Yeah.
back and be like, we were never going to get the movie that I thought
Right.
I was going into. But the ads for it, they went
Yeah.
so hard on the horror, and then like some of the early reviews too. I know it didn't do well. Like, I mean, it did fine. It's a Marvel movie. It's doing great. But
Right.
like, the critical reception didn't age particularly well out of the
Right.
theater on this one. But like even early reviews and stuff were talking about like how dark and spooky and inventive it was. And I was like, I got really hyped for this one,
Yeah.
for all the wrong reasons
I think that,
to go
and again,
into.
that's why I this is why I don't like reading and listening to reviews in the early stages, because there's a lot of people who are hyping things or denigrating things.
Yeah,
Um, and I think it's a lot for clicks. And
it's gotta be.
it's too much of that, because then you go into it and you're either, if you got hyped because everybody else is hyped for it, then you get disappointed when it's not quite what you thought it was going to be. And the same goes the other direction too, is if everybody's talking shit about it and you go into it and you're going like, this is actually really good, what are they talking about? And that's happened to me so many times, and I'm just like, this is why I don't read or listen to them anymore. I haven't really paid attention to reviews until afterward. um
You know, it's
so
crazy because I'm usually like, I'll avoid trailers and stuff as much as I possibly can
yeah, I
having a
don't avoid
podcast.
trailers.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes we have to, like, sometimes on podcasts, like we've got to cover news. I have to
Yeah.
see stuff. But like for the most part with movies and stuff, I do like full media blackouts going into a movie that I'm excited about. I've never had I think this was the first one where like trailers and audience reviews and like the hype surrounding it like really infiltrated my opinion of a Marvel movie.
Mm.
Because for the most part, I feel like I knew better. Like I think the one exception that's not entirely true. And actually, I was on here to talk to you about the other one. People being so pissed about Dark World actually, I think, gave me a
Mm.
much higher opinion of Dark World.
Yeah, there you go. See.
But
Well,
this
and
was
I
the
think that's
first and only where it like negatively impacted my
yeah.
experience.
And I think that's exactly what it is too. Is like so many people have talked shit about Dark World, and then you finally go see it, and you're just like, well, this isn't nearly as bad as people say it is. Which, true, it's not nearly as bad as people say it is. It's not good. It's not like good enough for me, for most
Yeah,
people. But we already had this argument.
yeah,
But but I think, yeah, I think that's the problem, is that when so many people hype or put down a movie, depending on what it is, that yeah, you're going to have that yo-yo effect of, well, it's not as good or not as bad as people say it is. And that's why I try to, if I'm even remotely interested in something, I'm just going to go see it,
Yeah.
regardless of what other people are saying or not. And it's like, and that's the thing. Sometimes I've gone to a movie where, like, the movie Talk to Me,
Okay.
everybody was talking about the movie. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's so good. And I was just like, it looks okay, but wasn't like super stoked on it. And so, but I did finally go out to the theater and watch it. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good. This is like really good. And the same was for like Barbarian. I wasn't too interested in that because it didn't seem very interesting at first. And then I finally went and watched it. I was like, oh my God, this is stupid, insane. Like, I like it.
Barbarian was one of the only ones I think that I've ever that's ever just lived up to that hype so fully. Because
Yeah.
everyone was like,
But
"You've
there's
got
some
to
people
watch
who hate it
Barbarian,"
though.
but I
Yeah.
won't tell you anything about it. And I'm like, "This sounds like a hoax."
Right. And it's so not. If anybody has not seen
It wasn't.
Barbarian, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but literally what she just said.
Yeah, don't learn anything. I can't
Don't.
tell you anything about it, but go
And
in
the
and watch
and the
it.
trailer, and somebody later was like, the trailer spoils everything only because you've seen it. The trailer
Yes.
doesn't tell you jack shit if you haven't seen the movie.
Oh
Like,
no, not
it's
at
just a
all.
series of scenes, and most of it's for the beginning of the movie. So, there's no real spoilers in that. So anyway, we're not talking about that movie.
No. Um
But
we're
yeah,
talking about this movie. And I think I think if I had not gone in with the expectations that I had, I
yeah,
still think there are critical issues with the movie. Like, don't get me wrong, it has a lot of faults. I have a lot of complaints, but I do think that like my rage about this when I saw it for the first time, I think that was a little bit unfair. I think
yeah,
I got too pulled into the narrative surrounding the movie instead of like
right.
just experiencing the movie. And I do think, and like I said, if you're just wanting to, and it's hard to say this because it's hard to pick like one MCU movie and say just turn your brain off, have some fun, whatever, because that makes it sound like you feel like comic book movies can't be taken seriously. And they can be. They can tell real stories, they can deal with real things. They can do it very well. It's a big reason why, the MCU works as well as it does sometimes. I think some of the best comic book movies ever come from this series.
Right.
I know they can do heavy topics and darker topics
Mm-hmm.
very, very well. I just think that this was advertised as one of those movies and was not one of them. Like, this is a turn your brain off action silly movie, and that's okay. But like, but I don't think we can.
I don't.
I don't think it holds up to the like
I don't
part.
think. Go ahead, sir.
Oh no, I'm just trying to figure out like how to. I don't think it holds up to the level of scrutiny that some of the other stories in this series do.
Like, I don't think that it's. I don't. That's the thing. Like, I don't really think it's trying to say a whole lot. I think
No.
it's a really continuing Wanda's story, and I really want to get into this too because I disagree with the large contingent of people who say that she was done badly in this movie. Because they're saying it's out of character for her. And it's like, of course it's out of character for her. The moments that are out of character for her are because she is negatively influenced by something outside of her. Um, and I think that's just, and I know people are like, well, that's a cop out. And it's like, it's not though. It's part of the story. It's like
So
it's said plainly in the story that she's being influenced by the Darkhold, that she's not this person. And multiple times Doctor Strange tries to get her to back down, without the fight. And so,
so I do kind of agree with you, but I'm on the fence about this one because I do think Wanda was handled very poorly for a lot of reasons
okay,
in this movie.
definitely want to get into that.
But I also see where you're coming from. Like, I'm angry about it, but I'm not angry about it for the same reason that, like, because she is being influenced by an outside thing. And I
Right.
think that's kind of, and I think a lot of the people just kind of, like you said, they say that it's like a cop out answer. I think where a lot of, I don't. have the frustration with that, but I feel like the influence of the I don't remember what it's called anymore, the book,
The Darkhold. Yeah.
the Darkhold. She is under the influence of that, which kind of affects her character, and I think like the outline concept of that is very strong. But I think because this happened so close after WandaVision, a lot of
Right.
the reason why people felt like it was a cop out was because we saw her work through her issues, and then we just like kind of retconned the like it feels like we just gave her that same issue again, you know,
Okay.
instead of like.
I do want to argue that, but yeah. but
But I
because
feel like if we had had
yeah.
something where it was like this didn't feel, they were kind of in a tough spot with it, I think, because it's like they had to have known that a lot of people were not going into this having seen WandaVision.
Yeah.
So they couldn't make it like too much of a direct continuation where you have, you know, all of that knowledge. But if you have like a passing knowledge of it, or you don't really understand the influence of the Darkhold, which I think they could have definitely hit on harder to smooth this transition. I think there were a lot of things that could have made this seem less like a she's backsliding in her character story where we're
Right.
losing her progress, and it could have felt more like a continuation of like her story. It could have felt more of like a backslide into something, you know. They could
Right.
have gone like an addiction to power angle. They could have gone like they couldn't really do like a PTSD thing, I guess, because that's basically WandaVision again at that point. But like they could have done like a what does she want for the future getting corrupted thing. Like I think they just,
Right.
there were little tiny tweaks that they could have made that would have made this feel like a next step for her instead
Right.
of like a backslide, you know?
Right. Well, and I think part of the problem is that I think that's part of the issue is that I think too, like everybody felt like Wanda was had gotten past it by the end of WandaVision, but I argue that she really didn't. I mean, she's still hurting. She's still in massive pain. She had to once again give up her love of her life and then her two children at the same time. That's like, because that's the thing. She already worked through like the working through part of it. I think that she got through by the end of WandaVision may have been losing vision. But now she has the grief of losing these two children that she had too, that she doesn't really get to, she lets them go at the end. But to me, that's not working through that at all.
I,
Um,
I understand where that's not working through it, but it just
right,
feels like she has that arc to be able to let them go. So there's no, it's very hard to introduce the next movie as, and now that I've let them go, I will become the villain to find two of these
right.
fucking kids.
Well,
Like it's just that feels, it feels weird for her.
so and again, I think they did. I think I agree with you that I think they do a bad, not a bad job, a poor job at explaining exactly what's going on with her.
Yeah.
But it is there because when
And
they show you in the beginning, she's dreaming of them, and we learn in the course of this movie that your dreams are visions of yourself or in an alternate universe, and so she's dreaming of these kids, and in at the end of WandaVision, it already shows she's being corrupted by the Darkhold at that point as well. So that corruption is already there. And again, they don't really explain how insidious the Darkhold really, really is. And that's the problem, is that
so
between WandaVision and this movie, they don't really explain how bad the Darkhold is. And
that was one of the things that they could have
yeah.
done a lot better
Yeah, definitely.
because and you know, I don't know, again, maybe this was asking too much from a Marvel movie, because people go in with expectations of like who you're going to follow. Doctor Strange's name is in the title of this movie, so I understand that this might have been an unrealistic expectation, but I do feel like a like sharper version of this story follows Wanda earlier on, we get to see more of that corruption. This is more of an ensemble
Right.
piece before it splits and she becomes the villain, because that it's such an important part of what could have made that narrative work, and it
Right.
just feels very phoned in. Like,
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because while watching it with the commentary and everything like that, they talk about her performance and her giving all to it. Like there's
yes,
moments where she is like they actually were like, are you okay with doing another take? This is, you know, very emotional. She's like, it's fine. Like I'm here for it. She is like, and that's the thing. She's like when you, and that's why I think again that there's maybe pieces of this missing that could have helped people understand it a little bit better. And maybe it's just because again, I maybe coming from the comic book background, like I understand it a little bit better. And I guess I'm a little bit more forgiving of the lapses. And I fill in the gaps probably on
that
my
very
own.
well could be it.
Yeah.
I also want to throw this out there. This is maybe something I should have mentioned when I was talking about like the two very different reactions I had to this.
Right.
I had not seen WandaVision the first time I saw it.
And that was the other thing
And
I was gonna say. Is maybe
like,
people going into it who hadn't seen WandaVision and the last thing they saw of her was Endgame,
but
seeing her in this is like, what the fuck just happened? You know,
I
so
did go back into, but I will say my issues with how Wanda was treated in this movie specifically are different, but they're not fixed by having watched WandaVision. I think
right.
Marvel has like a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, because if you've seen WandaVision going into Multiverse of Madness, it feels like a backslide for her character. If you have not seen it, you're wondering what the hell was going on
Yeah,
with
what happened
Wanda during
between the
that
two
time.
movies? Yeah.
Like, I remember being just like so, and it felt like because one of the angriest times I've ever been was watching Natasha's arc in Age of Ultron, where
Mhm.
I was just like, this came out of nowhere and it's so
Yeah.
weird and I hate it. And now we're doing it again with Wanda. Like, if you haven't seen WandaVision, if you didn't like understand her coping process, I guess, and see the,
Right.
you know, relationship that she built up with these kids in WandaVision, you're watching like Multiverse of Madness and you're just like, I am so confused about
Right. Yeah.
this choice. And so I would like, it helped, I think, watching WandaVision, but it did feel like they expected me to have seen WandaVision for the story to make sense. And then also they showed they showed me like a plot point almost a second time because she
Right.
has to like come to terms with
She's still
this.
going through the grief. Yeah. And again, I really think that's the larger thing is that she hasn't fully, and again, it's that and that's the major issue. It's the corruption of the Darkhold. The
Yeah.
Darkhold is amplifying everything. She would not make this decision if it weren't for the Darkhold. That's where like I argue this ultimately where it comes down to is, and everybody's like, this is so out of character for her. Yes, it is out of character for her. I agree 100%. This is not who Wanda would be at all. But the Darkhold is this evil, evil fucking book. And like, imagine the fucking Necronomicon from Evil Dead. And that's what this book is. But it's just tainting you and influencing you and making you do shit you don't want to do. Um, and
I
so,
really think what this needed was a transition movie where we get to see her fall more and more under the
yeah.
corruption.
Or
Like,
at least something like maybe a special on
something,
her,
yeah.
like, you know, one of those, you know, Disney Plus specials or something like that. But
Something.
yeah, and that could have helped for sure. I mean, I
Because
guess because I
I
understood the corruption that I didn't have the same problems. Um,
and
and
those are
that's
some of my favorite, like,
yeah,
because I didn't read all of the comics, I'm missing like so many gaps in the history of these stories, but that's like one
right.
of my favorite tropes in fantasy just generally, is the corruption arc. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of with you. I did not like how her character was handled. I didn't like the execution of this arc in the movie, but I understood, and I do get kind of frustrated at people that don't seem to understand that she's intentionally out of character.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's where it gets frustrating. It's just the people who don't understand. Look, she everybody knows that. Even Doctor Strange, like himself, is like, look, this
He
is not
says it
her. Like
in the
this,
movie
like
several
they try
times.
to save her multiple times. They try to stop her and not try to like, and ultimately, like that's the thing. Nobody kills her. She sacrifices herself. Although, again, I argue she's not dead. There's no way they're killing off
Yes.
her character. Like
No.
this is just temporary. Like they're gonna bring her back. They'll redeem her, like they've done in the comic books. Like, and this is the thing. I'm gonna talk about this. I don't know how much you've read of the Scarlet Witch's storyline throughout the years, but she, this is a common theme with her: is that she goes insane. She does something terribly bad, and then she ends up coming back and redeeming herself. It's kind of a shitty fucking thing for them to keep doing to her character. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those things where it becomes lazy writing in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But again, part of it is because of the chaos magic and the stuff that the things that she taps into are evil. It's very evil. The whole Wundagore Mountain thing, that thing, it's so, and that's what's frustrating is that there's so much more that goes into um explaining in the comic books because they have time to tell you, whereas in a movie they don't really have that much time to tell you. But
No.
Wundagore Mountain, where where their finale happens and everything, is this like in the movie, it's this font of dark magic that this demon Cathan is in, and like is he's embedded in it. And she in the comic books, her and Pietro grew up around like near that mountain, and so she was influenced from the time she was a child, and her chaos magic was becoming a thing with her. And so it's a
Yeah.
whole thing where she's been influenced her whole life by these outside forces. And so
See,
because
and that's
they can't get into it in the comic book or in the movies and stuff like that. But I mean, it's obvious like with the image on the wall and stuff of her as the Scarlet Witch and her children and everything like that. There's something there that's meant to be there, like about her. So
and I
anyway,
will say that is something that's really frustrating. This is a point that I know you and I differ on because we've talked about the MCU before, but I feel like it really hammers it in because I did not read any of the Scarlet
yeah,
Witch story. So it was and it kind of proves my point. I think the further we get into the MCU, the less self-contained each movie becomes. And for a long
it does
time,
get harder at times. Yeah, for sure.
up through phase 3, this was the thing that I feel like they were really good about. Up through phase 3, I was also watching like all of the side content and stuff.
Yeah,
But coming back in and watching like just Multiverse of Madness, it was very frustrating. First of all, because I wondered what the what the hell was going on in WandaVision that I missed.
yeah,
And then I and at the time, just because I don't like Wanda that much in the movies. I
yeah.
actually my favorite
Same.
Wanda is from WandaVision, but I had no
Right.
desire to watch that because I just wasn't super
They
interested. I don't like the
they
shows as
hadn't
much
fleshed her out
anyway,
that much. Yeah.
and the character wasn't doing anything for me, so first of all, I found myself doing like it did kind of feel like homework when I started WandaVision. I was doing like Multiverse of Madness homework, and then and I'm glad you brought up the scene with the mountain because it's like you can tell just from like you can tell watching it that something is going on there, but the explanation that they give in the movies made
It's
very little
thin.
sense to
Yeah.
me as to why it was so thematically relevant. And even having this conversation with you right now, that makes so much more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was something they didn't really get across to me in the
Right.
movie.
Yeah. And that's the frustrating thing. I'll admit that for sure. Like if you come into it and I argue that most of these movies you could still come in fairly blind and at least somewhat enjoy the movie. You have to
Yeah.
take it with the grain of salt that yes, you're missing something from the story. They're going to give you enough that you can understand for the most part what's going on. Obviously, you didn't watch WandaVision, you may not know exactly what the transition between Endgame and this
Yeah.
is. But but that's where they go back and go, okay, well, you can go watch WandaVision and find out, if you want to know. And I mean, but this is how it is in the comic books too. Like you can maybe not read a certain storyline and then pick up something like a big like event storyline later and go, wait, how did this character become like how what they're doing now? What happened to this character? Like, like
It
for example, how is Sam Wilson Captain America now? What happened to actual Captain America? And then you have to go back and read those stories, and you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. And that's as somebody who
it
grew up reading comic books, I can't tell you how many times like I had no fucking clue what the hell was going on in a certain storyline, but you'd have to go back later and find out, pick up the back issues and go, oh, okay, this is the interesting story. Okay, yeah, okay, that makes more sense now to the thing I was reading before. And so I get that as a moviegoer, that's frustrating because you don't want to have to go back and go, okay, well, now I got to go back and watch this other thing. But I don't know.
it
I
is really
it
frustrating,
makes
and
it fun as a comic book person. But I watch everything, so
I think that's part of the thing is that like at the height of the MCU, like I was there, I was watching everything,
right,
and the Easter eggs were fun. So I do get it, but on the
yeah,
other side of that, and I feel like Civil War, I don't really like talking about Civil War that much. It was not my favorite, but it was one of those things where I enjoyed the movie fine. I felt like they gave me all the information I needed. And
right.
those were still richer stories when I went back and I read Civil War the comic,
Oh, and it's such
like
a different storyline too. That's
it's a
so
very
yeah,
different storyline, but like
yeah.
I could see,
The threads, yeah,
where it
the
was coming
underlying
from, and
threads of it,
like
yeah,
that was better. But this one I just like the mountain, I just felt like that was information they weren't giving me,
yeah.
and that was
No,
very frustrating
and I
because they
can,
used to be better about that.
yeah. I think that's, and I think this one suffers from. It's not even that um they got bad about not giving you enough information about it. There was too
There's
much going on in
just
this
so
movie.
much information
And
that they
now
had
this
to
is
give
what's
you.
interesting. This is what's interesting about the movie as well, though, too, is that there were times where they were writing bits for the movie like while filming. Like
Yeah.
they had the overall story, but then they think of of an idea like the Strange in the one universe where there was the incursion where Strange
Yeah.
and Rachel McAdams' character land. I can't remember her name now.
That's like
Christine.
that's
Um,
fantastic because I just remember her as Rachel McAdams.
yeah, Christine Palmer. I remember now. But yeah, so she so that's Strange that they meet the evil Strange. That wasn't who they were originally supposed to meet there. They were supposed to meet another Doctor Strange that was their original idea, but his name was Melvin Strange, and he's supposed to be like a street magician type guy. And it was supposed to, be like this whole thing about just magic being even in the everyday, blah blah blah. And so they changed it. And they were like, "Oh, let's bring it in Evil Strange and do this stuff with the music notes and everything else." And it made it interesting and different. I admit that's a fun sequence, um, and leads to stuff that happens later on in the movie. So I think that's kind of part of the thing too, is that there's moments where they probably threw in new ideas as they were going along that kind of muddies maybe other aspects that they could have taken time to explain some of the
I,
other stuff. So
I'm kind of glad that you brought that up, because there were production issues behind this.
yeah,
Issues is maybe complications. There were production complications
yeah,
with the script. I feel like this is maybe, I'm not going to say the messiest, but I do feel like this is one of the messiest MCU
yeah,
movies just in terms of plot structure. It's a little bit all over the place. And then and I remember I was watching like a little clip where they were talking about kind of behind the scenes, like all the script changes and stuff, and they're like, there was kind of an offhand comment made where it's like, but you'd never know, it came together really well in the end. And it's like, oh, I definitely knew. Like, it shows, because
yeah,
and it's like, and it's hard to be mad at some of it because I also think that was a really interesting direction that they took
yeah,
that sequence in, but you watch the movie and it does feel like a string of things that are happening and not
right,
like a plot that is being lived in and execute, which is frustrating because, again, I feel like there are other Marvel movies where that is a strength, where the
Right.
characters have a lot of agency and directly impact the plot. It's a
Right.
main reason why I liked this over other kind of action based movies because it always felt very, like relevant to the character, whereas this is
Right.
just like a bunch of crazy stuff that's happening sequentially.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I again, I enjoy the movie. I get the issues with it. I think that overall, for me, everything hangs together just well enough, to get me going. And I think, like, I don't mind the kind of slapdash, nature of it, especially because it's a Sam Raimi movie, and that's kind of how he makes movies. Um,
I think that's why this works a lot better as a Sam Raimi movie than it
yeah,
does as a Marvel movie.
like if it were like
Like,
if it were anybody else, I think it would have failed. Like it would have, well, it
yeah,
wouldn't have failed, but I think that it would have, like, I wouldn't have liked it as much. Because I think that Raimi's natural filmmaking ability, and this is what I've said to other people before, is Raimi is one of the few directors that has a actual visual language that is his. Um
yes,
so many directors, and I'm not saying that all directors are like this, but so many directors are just workmen. You wouldn't tell one director from the other in terms of their how they're filming movies, in general. They're not
yeah.
setting up crazy interesting, angles and anything like that, but you can tell a Sam Raimi movie.
You
So,
can.
and so it's with when he's given the ability to make a movie the way he makes them. And so, and even in the Spider-Man movies, you can tell they're his movies as well, because he gets to, do his fancy camera work and stuff like that here and there. But and so I think that's what helps a lot, again, is just that you can tell it's a Sam Raimi movie. He's doing his best with what he's given, because he was brought on um after Scott Derrickson dropped out, because Derrickson was supposed to do it. He was the director of the first Doctor Strange movie, and he dropped out because what he wanted to do and what Marvel wanted wasn't lining up. And so he's like, screw it, I'm out. I'll go make the Black Phone instead. um and then they were like, okay, well, let's try Sam Raimi. And I think this is, again, one of those movies where it's I can see the arguments for it being one of those movies where they are, because it's introducing um multiverses in a way for the movie going audience in a way that hadn't been seen quite yet. Because we'd seen it with Loki, but not with, and so if people hadn't seen Loki, this was the first time anybody was seeing it with the MCU, because they touch on it with No Way Home, with bringing in the
Yeah.
Spider-Man villains and such, but you're not going to those universes. They're coming to this one. Whereas this one, you're actually going out into the other universes and you're having to, mess around. And so I think that kind of had a lot going
Which
against it in a way too.
it had a lot going against it. And I do just kind of want to throw this out there. That's one of my other biggest complaints in terms of like what they promised versus what we got, because the trailers for this were so crazy and I was so excited. My favorite part of the MCU for a long time was the multiverse aspect. Like when
Mm-hmm.
they started introducing that was when they started teasing it, I was so on board because I
Oh
love
yeah,
multiverses. Like some of my
same.
favorite like things ever. It's a big reason why I still watch Rick and Morty, to be honest, because I just like the multiverse concept. It's why I loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. Um,
Yes.
and I feel like that as a movie, that was more like what I expected to this to be,
Yeah.
honestly, because we get to see like clips of those other universes. They felt
Right.
real. When people came in from those universes, you could see how they acted like very differently and stuff. And I wish I had gotten more, and this sounds dumb, multiverse madness.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where was it?
Yeah. No, and I do think that would have been more fun of them hopping through different multiverses and experiencing rather than getting one universe where you get the whole Illuminati. It would have been interesting to jump through different universes and maybe get one of each of them in a different universe as they went along
Yeah.
rather than all of them at once. It would have maybe been a lot more fun that way. For sure. I
It would
think
have taken
again,
up more
budget
time, and
constraints.
then
Yeah.
and it's kind of one of those. It's like I think it would have had to have been structured very differently. It would have eaten
Yeah.
up a lot of time. And then my other kind of complaint to that though is like, would that have been a bad thing? Like this was supposed to be a Doctor Strange movie, and he
Yeah.
feels very much like a secondary character in
Yeah.
this, you know, which is it's another thing that's really frustrating because I really like Doctor Strange as a
Yeah.
concept. I was not a huge fan of the Doctor Strange movie because I felt like we didn't get quite as much
Yeah.
like character as I had wanted. And when he shows up in the ensemble movies, I feel like it's just kind of to be an omniscient wizard man, like
Right.
with a bunch of answers. And so I was like really excited that we're getting another Doctor Strange movie. And then like it didn't have the amount of Doctor Strange that I wanted still. Which sucks because and we talked about this with Wanda, but I think it's also worth mentioning, like the performances across the board, I think are just
Oh yeah.
exceptional in this.
Everybody's
Like the
everybody's
casting
top notch
was
in this. Yeah.
pre-existing for the most part, but it like everyone gave their best for this.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I think made it really more entertaining on the rewatch.
Yeah.
Um, and
No,
it
I
is
agree. I
a
think
fantastic
that,
job.
yeah. I think, Cumberbatch is doing his greatest. They actually mentioned that in the commentary as well. Is just that, there were times where he was coming up with ideas for his character and they ended up putting those into the movie because it's just, he cares about the character. And that's what
Yeah.
you'd love to see about that. And this is the same with Wanda, with Elizabeth Olsen. They bring so much to the characters because they care so much about those characters. Um, and the filmmakers are giving them the room to do that and bringing so much more to it than just being what's written on the page. So
I also, just before we leave casting for this, I've got to throw this out there. I saw a lot of shade being thrown at John Krasinski's casting.
ugh,
I loved him. I
right,
thought like so
everybody
good.
been wanting him to be Mr. Fantastic forever. Why was that shade? Like,
I
that's what I
don't know.
didn't
I got
understand. That's what
so
everybody
frustrated.
wanted. Like, I think the problem was is that and maybe I'm wrong, but I think because everybody wanted him to be Mr. Fantastic so bad that when we finally got him, and one, he's kind of dismissed quickly,
Yes.
and two, because everybody went, well, then shit, we're not going to get him for the main MCU, and we didn't, because they've since announced that Pedro Pascal, which I feel is still brilliant. That's a brilliant casting. Um,
Yes.
I'm honestly more happy with that than John Krasinski, and I would have been totally fine with John Krasinski. So
But I do think that was the thing that it got me really frustrated because I was like, we wanted it, we got it as much as we were ever going to,
yeah,
and then
and that's the thing.
because I do think the character wasn't written particular, like you said, it was very dismissive of the character
Yeah,
in this one. It's kind of there and done, and now we don't get John
and that
Krasinski
was with
anymore.
most of the Illuminati, really. So
Yes. But I do feel like I saw a lot of like more than anything else with the Illuminati thing. I feel like people were saying that John Krasinski didn't do a good job, and it's like he did great. Like that
yeah.
wasn't a John Krasinski problem.
No, no, he did great. I like, with what he was given, it was good. I thought he
Yeah.
did great with that, and the same with everybody on the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Bringing Patrick Stewart back, bringing Haley Atwell back to be Captain Carter. Like that was fun. Like I
Yeah.
know she has since expressed her frustrations because she's like, well, I shouldn't have been taken out by by a frisbee, and I'm like, okay, well, but your version of her wasn't, it's like, this is
Yeah.
a different version of her anyway. So I don't know. It's just I get the frustrations, but at the same time, you were going up against the Scarlet Witch, who's like super mega powerful. You weren't going to win. They literally explain it in the movie that she has reality manipulation powers. Y'all are
Yes.
fucked, So, but yeah, and I
But
mean,
it's those kind of things. Like I don't want to call it necessarily sloppiness, but it's just
yeah,
kind of those like miscellaneous concept issues, I
yeah,
guess. Like script level. I think if this had gotten, I was going to say one more pass, but they were still writing it like while it was happening. I think if this had been a final script that had gotten a full editing pass,
right,
it could have been really, really just a mind-blowing, fantastic movie. And that's not the movie that we got. But
right,
I also don't think it's entirely fair to compare it to what it could have been. Like,
yeah,
this is what we
exactly.
got.
This is what we
It's
got.
flawed, but I'm glad that we have it because like once you get past that initial anger that some of us me had, it's a ton of fun. It's visually I don't like the editing. I think did I mention that already? This is
No,
the poorest edited Marvel movie that I've ever personally seen. I haven't seen all of the like last year of them,
right,
but I the editing because I'm very nitpicky about editing anyway, and it was done very like it's very rushed
interesting.
here. It's
Yeah,
chaotic. It drove me crazy. But aside from the editing, uh, I this is a visually stunning movie. It's interesting. It's fun to look at. We
yeah,
get to see a lot of like fun little cameos. It's a good time, and I'm glad that we do have it,
yeah.
even though I don't think it was done particularly well.
Yeah, and I think going to your argument about the different aspects that's going into this movie and the script and stuff, it feels like again, I really like this movie. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, pretty much out the gate because it was entertaining to me. I had a lot of fun with it, so I'm immediately just gonna go, okay, this was great. Whatever flaws I might have had with it were cobbled over with just how fun it was. Um, but I can see where realistically there's probably like 3 or 4 separate movies going on in this thing that
Yes.
if you could have taken them out and expanded on aspects of these, they would have made even more interesting movies. There's no way they can do that. You can argue that with a bunch of movies. I can argue, and I'll probably be
Oh yeah.
arguing this with um Thor Love and Thunder tomorrow when I'm talking to my guest about that. There's there's so there's other longer, maybe even better movies that you could have made out of this. But for what it did, I think it works generally well. And like you said, it quibbles aside here and there, it's a fun movie.
It
Um,
is.
and we haven't talked about her yet. But America Chavez
Oh yeah.
is fantastic in this movie. I gotta
It's
I
so
know her
funny because
first
she's
name.
like the main character of this, and she's like just not come. Which again, I think that is kind of a script issue. She is not the actress. I don't know offhand what the actress's name is that
Is
played her.
Xochitl Gomez.
Zochi Gomez. She, I think, like everybody else, she does a fantastic job
Yeah,
from a performance. From a script writing, from like a dialogue and screenplay level, it's crazy to me. America is one of the like weakest parts of this movie, and it's insane because
especially
on
knowing the
paper
character.
she's
Yes,
the most interesting. A-
she is in the comic book. She is one of the most dynamic characters, and yeah, I agree with that. That like the character in this movie is so hampered by whatever. And I get they're trying to introduce her and trying to like kind of I guess lessen who she is, but in the comic books, she is a powerhouse. Like she's
and
one
it
of the
seems like
most
she should
powerful
have
people in the
been.
comic books. So it's ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like it was very clunky writing anyway, but it really bothered me that they're like, here's this character, we're going to tell you all of the reasons why she's very powerful, she's very important to the plot, like we need her to be able to do all of these things that we're basically already doing in the search to find her. But like whenever they make time to tell you things about America, it's like, oh man, she's afraid of bees. Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
What kind of development is this? You know,
yeah.
like, and she didn't get to have. And again, coming into, I think this is going to be the case with any character that comes into the MCU this late in the game. It's something that I've said about characters that came in even earlier, but it's like when they don't have solo movies, like when you come in an ensemble movie, there's just not enough time
Yeah.
to give us the character work for America that I think maybe we needed for her to
Well,
land better.
and I think that's kind of what they should be doing more with the Disney Plus shows is doing what they did with Miss Marvel. Give her a
Yeah,
show where you can expand her, like you can give her some good growth because she can't grow in the movies. You can't have
no.
this character have these arcs, like because she's a side character, like and that's why, like, even if you give somebody like America Chavez, you don't have to give her a full series, but just give her like maybe a 3 or 4 episode series, just a small mini series, just kind of explore her character. That would be
Yeah,
fine, and then you bring her into the bigger, wider MCU. I think that's where it's much better in the overall. And you don't have to give them more than the one season. You can introduce them in that one season, bump them up to the big movies, and let them just be movie characters from that point on. I think that's what the disservice was to characters like Wanda, Vision, Hawkeye, Falcon, and to a degree Winter Soldier, although I argue Winter Soldier got a lot of fucking screen time in the movies. We didn't
arguably too much screen time, one might
like,
say.
and it's fine that he was part of Falcon and Winter Soldier, but it was really Falcon's story. Um
Yeah,
but so I think that that was the problem, was that once you know phase you know phase 3 was done, Endgame was over and everything, and they're like, we really want to explore these other characters more. you know that was good that they did that. They were like, okay, well, we're
yeah,
going to give you some more story on these characters, maybe a little backstory, maybe a little bit of some of this other stuff. Flesh these characters out that you haven't been able to get much of in these movies. Black Widow, she had pretty good character development through the movies because she would pop up in Iron Man or Captain America and then the Avengers movies and stuff. So she had some good character development. I think giving her a movie of her own was great. She needed something like that to kind of explore out the rest of her storyline that we hadn't gotten previous to that. So that I
yeah,
was fine with that as well. But I mean, on the other hand, if they had given her a TV series, I would have been okay with that as well. So, and that's kind of what they do in the comic books too, is in the comic books, characters get, like, more often than not, what you'll get is what happens with this movie, with this you'll get a character who will pop up, somebody new. You're like, oh, that's interesting, I like that character. They might pop up in a few other things. They might pop up in the Avengers storylines or something like that. Maybe they're just a side, like one of the Avengers who only is in the Avengers. They don't have um like their own series, like Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. They always have their own ongoing series of their own adventures going on. The Avengers is their big adventures. But meanwhile, Black Widow, Hawkeye, they didn't have their own stuff. They would get the occasional one shot or mini series. That's where I think that it works like that. I think really, America should get her own little mini series to kind of flesh her out a little bit more. That would be fun, even if you introduce her in Doctor Strange and then give her more play elsewhere. So
and I
that,
think that's something that the MCU, like, it's very frustrating to me because I think that is how it should work,
yeah.
and I know that they have the means to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and and I feel like they're not necessarily executing it well. Like,
They're
it's something that
not.
I
Yeah.
would love to, and it's hard because it's like it's so much harder to course correct than it is to plan ahead. It's easy for me sitting here to say, hey, here's how they should have fixed Wanda so that it made more sense from Endgame to, because I
Right.
do think that for the MCU the focus should be on moviegoers, like that's how
Yeah.
they got their base. I think that's who they should be catering to at this point.
Right.
And then, like you said, like I think I would have been a lot more open to WandaVision if I had felt like it was something that was like a fun extra and not like
Yeah.
plot relevant in a way. But I would love to see stuff like that with the shows as well, where it's like, here is this whole wide range of characters that you're being introduced to. And if you have a favorite side character, like there's a little bit of content for them, you know, like
Right.
that's because it's really easy to get, you know, burnt out on franchises. And this isn't even this is a Disney problem.
Yeah.
Throwing Disney under the bus because they do the same thing to Star Wars.
Right.
Like they do the same thing to all their IPs, and
And it's
I
not,
think
and
if
like the
we
people who complain about just Marvel and Star Wars, Disney doing that, Disney does it to their princesses too.
they do it to the
Like
princesses
they've
too.
pimped out
We
the
have
princesses into all the different, like, I don't know how many like direct to video sequels all these princesses have, but like
so
once they
many.
started doing that in the 90s, like all bets were off. And now they do live action versions of the cartoons too. They're doing it for everything. It's
They're
not just
doing it.
Marvel and Star Wars.
No, those are the easy ones to point to,
Yeah.
but like they've been doing it, and that's why I said like it's a Disney problem because
Yeah,
it wasn't
for
a
sure.
problem before Disney got involved in these
Right.
two IPs.
Yeah.
Like, but I do think that like that would be a better way, and I think it would help the burnout issue that fans have that try to watch everything, because it's like if we're
Yeah.
getting these really unique just stories, and I think it's why it works so well in comics, is because even though there's Marvel like overseeing everything, you know, they had different teams working on these different projects that could all run alongside each
Right.
other and, you know, fill in these gaps in world. And I feel like catering to bring that to screen, they really needed to continue catering to their core audience and then treat the shows as bonus content in a different way than I feel like they've been doing.
I think
And
it's
it's and
just, I think it's hard because they want to make sure that that what they're showing on the shows is that it matters, like that.
yeah.
And I think that's the problem when it comes down to it, is people aren't going to watch them if it doesn't matter. Like, and that's the funny thing about it, is because when you do something that doesn't connect to it, people don't like it. They don't go watch it. People weren't watching Runaways or Cloak and Dagger or some of these other shows because they weren't part of the MCU. People liked, and that's the thing. People want the connections,
Yeah.
but they feel that it, but then when they're asked to watch it, then they go, well, that's too much, and it's like, but this is what you wanted. So I feel like it's this weird double-edged sword, is that, the fans want it, but also then like they
But
don't want it at the same time. It's like
see,
too much for them.
this is what I'm talking about with like it's going to be hard for Marvel to course
Yeah.
correct from where we're at. I feel like if they had treated it that way from the beginning, because then if you were able to pick and choose what side content you wanted to watch, I think it would have been less overwhelming, you know, whereas
But
because
again,
I'm all for those one-offs.
right,
Loki was the first one that I watched because I liked Loki as a character, and it
right,
was fun to do. But then like Cloak and Dagger just sounded interesting, you know, and it's
yeah.
like, but I don't even think I finished the season of Cloak and Dagger because at that point I was like so overwhelmed that I had to go back and watch WandaVision to figure out what the hell was going on in Multiverse of Madness.
But
And
and
like,
that's yeah, and I think that's the other thing too, is like, especially if you are somebody like me who is like, well, I would love to watch everything, but I haven't
yeah,
watched. I think I've watched maybe a couple episodes of Cloak and Dagger. I think I watched a season and a half of Runaways. I didn't finish Agents of Shield. I got about halfway through and lost the plot on that one. Mostly that had to do with, I don't care
that
about the Inhumans, and
I
that
was going
they
to say
were
that's another thing
so
with
heavily trying to
this.
push that it was just like, nope, I
With
can't
the
deal.
side content, they really do need to put a cap on it because I really loved the first season of Agents of Shield and it was downhill from there. And then again, like it felt like something that I kind of felt obligated to finish and did not enjoy. Um,
Mm.
you know, and it I
Yeah, I've
like
never gone back to watch it.
spoiler.
I've wanted to, but like I'm just at the same time where I'm like, I don't know if I really need to.
You
And
don't really need to, I think, is the thing.
yeah,
And yeah, smaller, self-contained, optional stories, I think would have
yeah,
been a great and it I think it's going to be hard because and like you said, even if we had that content for America right now, we're already kind of in that burnout. It's hard to keep up with all of the
yeah.
MCU content phase. Like it's going to be really hard to do self-contained stories
Well,
that
and I
people are going to want to watch if they're not relevant because
right.
that's already where we're at
Yeah.
in this phase.
And I think that's just the nature of this in general anyway, because and
Yeah.
especially too that there's a lot of people I think and I've seen this brought up online as well too, is that when it was all the different studios doing everything with Fox doing X-Men and Fantastic Four and Sony doing Spider-Man projects and um whoever else was doing other stuff there for a while, that everything felt like it was diluting the MCU brand. And that's kind of where people have gotten to it too, is that there's people who go and see Madam Web or or Morbius and think that that's an MCU movie, and they're like,
Yeah.
that's not the quality that I expect, and they're like, the MCU has gone really downhill because it says Marvel at the beginning of those movies, and because they are Marvel movies. The problem is they're not really Disney quality, like, movies, because it's
Yeah.
Sony trying to fucking pull off whatever. Just they're trying to keep the rights to the Spider-Man franchise.
And
So
here's my hot take. Here's where it comes in. I think Madam Web should be put into the MCU. I think it should be inducted into the MCU canon.
wow. Okay. Did you like
Not
it?
because it's good, but because it's like it's so entertaining to me.
So
It's like
I
it's the
didn't mind
perfect
it. It
storm.
wasn't great, but I kind of liked it for what it was. Like,
I
don't get me wrong, the villain was crap. Like that whole thing
oh
was crap.
yeah.
But
I,
and I'm sorry, but the actress, what's her name?
Dakota Johnson.
Dakota Johnson. She's not a good actress.
She's
Like
not.
that's my main thing too, is
She
that she's just not a good actress. Like now, but the three girls, I would love to see them in a movie together. Like give them their own movie. Take Dakota Johnson out and put them in their own little Spider Girls movie, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. Because when they were on screen, they were the best thing about the movie.
my
So
thing with Madam Web, and I do have this streak a little bit where it's just like if something is bad enough, I might like it more than if it were just like medium okay. Um, and Madam Web, it hit all of the right notes for that. Like it was utter chaos. It didn't make a lot of sense. I don't think the acting or the effects were good. And
yeah.
for whatever reason, it was the most fun I've had in a comic book movie for a long time.
And like
It
and
was
the funny thing was like it had all the little weird like references to Spider-Man, like, and all this stuff.
yeah,
And like, and that's the funny thing too, because people complained about that. They're like, it was so full of references. But here's the thing, if it didn't have all those references, you would have complained about it not having the references. So it's like you can they're damned if they do and damned
can't
if they
win.
don't. Like,
I I will say I
I
really
love
loved
the
the
references. It was
references,
stupid. It was
but
fun.
yeah, but that was kind of the thing because I already had kind of written off at that point I already knew I was enjoying this because it was bad. And then they started throwing the reference and it was like a big sign every time where they're like, please remember this is a Spider-Man movie.
Right? Without
And I
saying
was
his
like,
name
amazing.
either. No, Spider-Man said they
Yeah.
went out of their way not to say Peter fucking Parker. And it was so fucking bizarre and weird. And I loved every minute of it because it's so goofy and like
It
I
was so, so silly.
I liked it. Like I didn't love it, but I liked it for what it was. And I knew going into it that it was a Sony Spider-Man adjacent movie. So
Yeah.
now I have not watched Morbius. I've not watched the Venom movies because those don't interest me. Like I'm not interested in either one of those. But
I had
Craven,
to watch Morbius and I
Craven, I'm
was
kind of
outvoted to
interested in.
watch Morbius and I
Ugh,
did not. It was rough.
I bet it's it does not look good.
Not
And I
good.
just don't like Jared Leto anyway in general.
Yeah.
So which is so disappointing because he's the lead in the new Tron movie.
Oh
Um,
no.
yes, and I love
Uh,
Tron. Tron is one of my favorite franchises, and Tron Legacy especially is one of my favorite movies. And I can't believe they gave him the freaking keys because he's a producer on it too.
Uh,
Can't believe they gave him the keys to the stupid franchise. Like, why? Anyway, that's my Tron rant over. Um,
but it is
but
something that I would have liked to and I can joke about them adding Madam Web to the MCU, but it genuinely is like that kind of fun. The MCU, and because it's a Disney thing, like they have to be this way, but it
right,
takes itself so like, is it going to be profitable? Is it going to make money? Is it worth our time as a studio to invest in this? And
yeah,
I think we need more weird, silly. That's
yeah,
kind of my favorite aspects of Multiverse of Madness were all the like crazy whimsical stuff that flash by in that one
yeah,
sequence,
yeah,
and I want more stuff like that where they're just like, hey, we're gonna take a chance on this crazy thing so that people can have a good time,
yeah.
like it's what I want out of out of these movies.
Right. And I think that's the interesting thing about these two is that I think that phase four was a chance to kind of branch out. We got
Yeah.
Shang-Chi, we got the Eternals. Some things worked, some things didn't, and the same thing with the Disney Plus shows, putting Miss Marvel out there, I think worked really well. Moon Knight was kind of middle ground.
Mhm.
Um, but I think putting stuff out there like something like Moon Knight or Miss Marvel, where they might have the chance to expand into a movie, um, and bring that into it is very interesting. Like She-Hulk, I would
Yeah.
love to see She-Hulk show up in the Avengers now. Like I don't need her. Like I don't get me wrong, I like the TV series, but I don't necessarily need a second season of that. We're introduced to her now. Graduate her to the movies. Let her be She-Hulk in the movies.
Yeah.
And
And I'm
so
glad
I'm
you brought up Shang-Chi just real quick because
yeah,
I did forget about that movie, but it's a good example of like I don't think it necessarily worked real well for them,
mm,
but I'm really glad that they took that chance because it was something different, it was something
yeah,
new, and I agree. I think that was one of their best like taking a chance and expanding
yeah,
out from where they had been. I would love to see more stuff like that
yeah.
from them
I
in the
yeah,
future.
and that's the thing. Like I think because they're like they're not going to be able to rely on Iron Man and Captain America anymore. They need to branch out. They need to introduce some of these side characters, to be members of the Avengers. I mean, we've already gotten a good amount of people who could potentially fill out a new Avengers roster.
Yeah.
But we haven't gotten an Avengers movie. And I've seen people argue this is that ultimately part of the problem with the MCU is that, we used to build to Avengers movies. We haven't had one yet. And we need an Avengers movie to build to. And so that's the frustrating thing for everybody is we just haven't had that yet. And I get it. But back to Doctor Strange. So but
Uh,
that's ultimately this movie. Like I agree with you to an extent that like all the characters kind of get underserved by the story itself, kind of being all over the place. But I do think that the movie is a lot of fun for what it does do. And I think Doctor Strange himself as a character, has a growth in it, however minor it is. It's just a, hey, you can't be the guy who holds the knife. It's the big fucking like thing from the whole thing is sometimes you got to let other people, you know, help.
yeah.
So, um,
Which I will say, because I came into this not really remembering him having any character development, but I don't think that's true. I think it's that he has like a secondary character amount of development where like usually
right,
in big cast pieces we see secondary characters have like one kind of takeaway that can be summed up with a catchy line. And
right,
I think my issue is that I had wanted a full movie's worth of growth out of him that I didn't get. So it
yeah,
felt like less development. He does learn a little bit, like
he
he does
does,
grow
he
some,
does,
but it's just not not as much as he should have with his name in the title of the movie, maybe.
right, yeah, but yeah, no, and again, I think that overall, it's a good movie. It's
It's
quibbles
fun.
here and there aside, it's a fun movie. I think Sam Raimi did as good a job as he could with what he had
with the
in terms of things.
constraints.
Listening to the commentary, nobody seems to have a bad, have had a bad time making the movie, and had no issues with doing what they did. They all seem to be okay with what came out of it. And I haven't heard any of them complain about, whatever issues they might have had with it. I mean, obviously,
Well,
they're
that's
probably,
good.
not going to bite the hand that feeds them or anything, but, because I'm sure Sam Raimi's going, hey, maybe I can get one of these Avengers movies now, which would be really fantastic in my opinion.
I was
Um,
gonna say that might bring me back to a theater for
Sam Raimi's
because
Avengers.
because
Be
even
so
this
weird.
one, I didn't go back to a theater to see this. I waited
Yeah.
until I picked up like every year I'll pick up Disney Plus for like a month or whatever to
Right.
catch up on stuff. But and I caught up on this one during one of those periods, but I think I would like to see Sam Raimi's Avengers in a theater. That feels like a very fun cinematic experience.
As long as they let him off the chain, like,
Yes.
at least as much as they did in this one.
At
Because
least this much. This is a
yeah,
good baseline.
yeah, for sure. There's definitely like they even mention it too, like during the sequence where Wanda's in the mirrors and like in the reflections and stuff. And that whole sequence in Camertage was was very Sam Raimi. The writer was just like, this was such a great moment because it was just Sam Raimi doing his thing. And
Yeah.
and that was just, it was a lot of fun. That like the moment where Wanda snaps uh Charles's neck, that's a great moment. Just scary, like, it's just that great jump scare. um and
I
so it's just, what, go ahead.
Oh, just also like another while I'm handing out hot takes, I guess. The one other hot take I have for this one, I would have loved if Wanda had not been redeemed at the end of this movie. Like we know that it's coming.
Mm,
It's obviously going to
interesting.
happen, but I loved and again, like throwing back to early MCU, I love the whole Loki arc where he's evil sometimes and not evil other times,
Yeah.
but I loved my favorite parts was like when it ends a movie with Loki kind of being the bad guy, which I think it's a lot easier to do with Loki, who is
Yeah,
traditionally seen
traditionally a bad guy,
as a
yeah.
bad guy, but I would have loved to see that kind of come from Wanda,
It's
where we just
interesting.
like end
Yeah,
the movie with her
that's a
still
very
being
hot take,
bad.
because especially with everybody who hated her being so bad, it would have been like, yeah, I can't imagine how pissed people would have been, like, what, she's still evil, what, she gets no redemptive arc, and like, damn.
Yeah, I wanted to go the other way. It's like I want a movie where we see her corrupted, and then I want at least one cliffhanger in one of
Oh,
these where
that would have
she's
been
still
good.
evil. And the reason why I brought it up there, I think Sam Raimi could have done that really
Oh, hell
well.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, another Sam Raimi aspect was the zombie strange. Love
I
that.
I
Oh
love
man,
Zombie Strange so much.
so good, and a lot of that is Cumberbatch's performance too.
Yeah,
Just, he was willing to sit in that makeup and do all the performance that was necessary for that, and it was just so good.
it
Yeah.
works.
No, it's definitely, like, in terms of it, like, you mentioned it being not going as dark as you had wanted. It's pretty close to being the darkest movie in a lot of ways that the MCU has done so far. In terms of some of the visuals, at least, especially the Raimi-esque stuff that's going on in this. So,
And I do wonder, this is something where it's like it's so hard to take our own backgrounds and perspectives out of
right.
things because I saw this marketed a lot as like the first horror movie in the MCU,
There were a
and
lot of it, and especially even when Derrickson was on board, he was touting it as, this is going to be the
yes,
scariest Doctor Strange movie ever. And I think that changed in once it moved over to Raimi. Um, that, that's the other thing about Raimi is, yeah, he made The Evil Dead, but the dude has, like, he really likes comedy.
yes,
And so he's going to bring that weird sensibility to it as well. I mean, anybody, like, as much as I love Evil Dead because it's so dark and weird and everything like that. I love it
It's
because
funny
it's fucking
though.
funny as shit too.
Yeah.
Army of Darkness is my favorite of the Evil Dead movies, and that movie's not really scary at all. That movie's just
No.
funny and goofy the whole time. And so that's where, because he and Bruce Campbell and all of their friends, they didn't start out making horror movies. The only reason why they made Evil Dead in the first place was to make a commercial movie.
Yeah.
They had a comedy background. They were doing Three Stooges shit. And so I think that kind of also tempered how far they were willing to go too. There was a
I
bit,
absolutely
yeah,
agree, but it is weird because it's like there are times when I look back at this movie, this week, especially when I've been kind of like trying to reconsider my thoughts of this one. You can see how it is like very horror influenced in certain sections.
yeah,
You can see these just like the zombie horror and kind of like a body horror aspect to some of
yeah,
these,
yeah,
and like you see it there, and you think, yeah, like maybe it is like if you were a comic book fan, if you were a Marvel fan, if you grew up in the MCU, I could see how this could be like a scary Marvel movie, but
right.
it's so hard to detach it from like any horror movie. Like
Well,
anyone
yeah,
I feel that's seen
yeah,
any horror movie is going to
yeah,
raise an eyebrow at that, you know?
for sure.
Um And also, yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up Sam Raimi, like the Evil Dead and the comedy thing as well, because that was I heard of the horror thing, and then I saw they were bringing Sam Raimi on, and I was like, oh yeah, because my first thought when I think Evil Dead, when I think Sam Raimi, is the original Evil Dead, and I'm
Yeah,
like, yes, but it does have at times I think more of that Army of Dark, like not all the time, but like it's very it's more about like the strangeness of it,
yeah,
uh, pun intended,
you're right. Yeah. I mean,
than
Bruce
it
Campbell's in a
is.
very funny role. So,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
he's got to bring Campbell into everything.
he
And
has
I'm here
to.
for it. I'm here for it. Um, what was the other thing I was can't remember now. Oh well. Um, but yeah, I think ultimately when it comes down to it, I think that it's a fun movie that, as long as like you can kind of put some of that stuff aside and understand that this was a movie that, and it was filmed partially during COVID. Um,
Oh yeah, it
so it
was,
had
huh?
a lot of issues with that. And so, there you and that may have played a partial role in things in the way it was made as well.
Yeah,
Um, so that kind of is one of those things where you have to put that in consideration. It's hard to put that in consideration when the farther away from the bulk of COVID you get from.
right.
And so
And I had forgotten even that was
yeah,
like when it was filmed.
yeah. But it's just um I think when you kind of step back from it like you did
Yeah,
and you know come at it from that different angle, then I think you can maybe enjoy it. I hope that people can enjoy it a little bit more
I
on
hope
maybe a
so
subsequent
too.
viewing. I hope people will give it a chance, those who maybe dismissed it the first time like you did. And I'm glad you
I,
did. You came back at it at a different thing, because I'm the same way. Like if I didn't like something the first time, it may take me a little bit, but I'll come back and try to rewatch it again and see if maybe I might like it. If I don't like it on that second time, then I'm like, yeah, I for sure don't like this movie.
you
Um,
can tell how much potential I think a movie has by how many times I'm willing to come back and rewatch it.
right.
Because like there are a lot of movies in the MCU that I watched one time and was like, no, that's enough. And then
Yeah.
just like never revisited. And this one, like I could tell that there was something there. I'm really glad I came back to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think a really good example of this actually is the 2013 Sam Raimi produced Evil Dead remake. I watch that every other year thinking that maybe I'll like it this time, and I never do,
Oh,
but
wow.
I
But you must
almost
like it enough that you
always
keep going
do.
back to it.
Yeah, there's something in there that speaks to me, but I can't quite get on the same page as
So I
everyone.
no, and I agree with you. I think that's the same thing with me with something like Black Christmas, the original Black Christmas, or the original My Bloody Valentine. I think they're good movies.
Yeah.
I don't love them the way other people do, and every time I watch them, I gain maybe a little bit of a better appreciation for it, but still not enough that I'm up there with everybody else who's just like, oh, these are some of the best horror movies ever. I'm like, I mean, they're okay, but they're not my jam fully. So whereas
That's
like
my
with
double feature is
yeah,
Black Christmas and My Bloody Valentine.
there you go. I
No,
would watch them again.
I do understand though, like because I am that way about stuff, and very rarely, but sometimes I am able to get on the other page, and I'm really grateful I had that experience with Multiverse of Madness because I
That's
do
cool.
think it's been my favorite MCU movie probably since Endgame.
Okay.
Um, I had a lot of fun with it the second time around, but I did not get there on the first watch.
And I get that. I get that. Especially if you go into it not knowing one, the
Yeah.
WandaVision stuff, and two,
Yes.
I get that that is a problem that sometimes they are doing stuff like that that again that may not uh you may not understand fully. And so I get that that may be something where people are frustrated with. And I fully agree with you. If that was your issue, you didn't understand that part of it, uh, try to watch that if you can. Go back and watch it. Maybe that'll
Consider it.
change
And
things for.
also, like I can't stress this enough because I was very resistant to watching WandaVision. Um I saw that first trailer and I was like hard pass on this one.
Oh
like
wow, okay.
uh but it's surprisingly I do think it is, and this isn't a hot take or a weird take. It's the best MCU show, I think.
Hmm.
For me.
Yeah.
I think probably for a lot of people also.
Yeah, I think most people tend to put it up there as their favorite. Yeah.
and, and I thought like
Because they
even
came out of the
when I
gate
saw
pretty
the
strong. That and
praise,
Loki.
they
Yeah.
did. When I saw a lot of the praise, I assumed it was people because for whatever reason, a lot of people really gravitated toward Wanda, in the MCU in a way that I did not, and I
Yeah.
assumed it was people that just already had that like desire to have more Wanda content. But it's very well done. So even if you're
Yeah.
someone that didn't like Wanda in the movies, and you have not seen WandaVision, it really is like it's worth watching, I think.
Yes, I agree because I was one of those people who wasn't completely sold on Wanda and Vision and their love story that very like barely got any kind of
Their
play in the
love
movies. It's
story's
like,
bad.
yeah, thank you. Like
Even
I
by
talked to
MCU standards, because the
like
romances are my least favorite part of the MCU all the time. I don't think they're done real well.
nah,
Uh
yeah, they're not done well.
and
Yeah.
even by that bar, even by that like Jane and Thor bar that we've established,
No.
I don't think Wanda and Vision had enough chemistry in the movies to
Right.
sell me on the premise of
So definitely like
WandaVision.
and that's the thing. If you go back and watch WandaVision now, I think you will then understand it because they give
Yeah,
depth to it in a way
it
that they couldn't
does.
give depth to it in the comic book or in the movies.
In the yeah.
So, and again, I think that's kind of what happens in the comic books as well too, is that, Wanda and Vision they both kind of came together in the Avengers books, and then eventually they got their own miniseries that got to flesh them out as a couple as well. So it's an interesting thing where the MCU can kind of parallel the comic books at times as well. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's but yeah, I don't have anything else that I can think of to say about this movie. Um, I
No,
really
I don't really
enjoyed it.
have
I
anything
love the
else.
Danny Elfman score in it. It was really well done.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
score was great.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think about about the score real often in the
Right.
MCU movies, but I do think this was maybe one of my favorites because I
Yeah.
noticed it in a
Yeah.
positive way. Like usually when I notice the MCU score, it's kind of like a really
Yeah.
this one
Well,
kind of a way, and
because there's always the recurring, Avengers motif, or
yeah.
or the Guardians motif or whatever. Yeah, and so you get these recurring songs here and there, which is fine. It makes sense to have these themes, uh,
Yeah.
threading through them all and everything like that. But yeah, I would say that most times the soundtracks in a lot of these movies serve kind of in the best way possible as just being there in the background.
It's
They're
just good background
Yeah, it's
noise.
good background noise. It's not obtrusive. It's not weird and
Uh,
even this Danny Elfman's score in this is doing the same job, but you notice it just that little bit more because it's Danny Elfman's music and he's doing things maybe in a slightly different way than the traditional composers who work these movies.
And it is something that I think is worth like mentioning because there are exceptions. There are movies where I can look at the score and be like, this is one of the greatest scores of all
Yeah,
time. And I noticed while
absolutely.
I was watching. But I will say, if I don't think about a score in a movie at all, I think the score is doing its job. Like,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah, I'm never going to complain that I don't think about the MCU score. Like, I think
Yeah.
they're doing a solid job.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, if you
but
if
I
you're
noticed
hearing a
this one in
score
a good
that and
way.
yeah, if you're hearing a score and you notice it, it's either doing one of two things. It's either super fantastic and it's doing its job plus, or it's discordant and doing a terrible job and taking you out of the movie. Which is, I would say, fairly rare. I don't think it's rare that I've ever watched a movie that the score has pulled me out of it. So
What was I watching the other day? I think it's also like a term that I've grown some as a viewer because I used to never notice at all, and now I can kind of pick out which scores I do and don't like. I was watching
mhm.
something the other day from like the 90s, and I was like, this is one of the worst scores I've ever heard. Like, oh, City of Angels. Like I used to
uh
really like, and then I went back and rewatched it, and it's like, what is going on with the music in
the
this?
the movie, the
Yeah,
Nicolas Cage movie.
the Nicolas Cage movie.
Oh, that movie's terrible. Oh my God. You
we
probably had to
we were
watch that for the
talking about
podcast, right?
yeah, I had to watch it for the podcast. It's crazy because it's one of my favorite Nicolas Cage performances, but I hate everything that's going on in the Meg Ryan plot
Mm,
of that
Interesting.
movie.
Yeah, I just
And
remember it
also the
being
score
terrible.
is
Yeah,
bad. Like, oh.
I just remember being bored. But yeah, no, it's a weird time in the Nicolas Cage filmography.
Yeah. I feel like it's always a weird time
It's
and the
always
the
a
more of
weird
these
time.
I
Yeah,
watch,
yeah.
crazy. We're doing our 41st episode this week, and it's like it is
Wow.
crazy how many Nick Cage movies I've seen.
I don't even think that's scratching the surface either.
Yeah,
He's
we're
made so
not
many
like
movies.
close to halfway yet.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, do you have anything else that you want to talk about that we did not talk about?
No, I think it's a testament to Benedict Cumberbatch's performance that I think this is one of his like least attractive character designs. And he's still like because when I saw the stills, it was like very distracting. They were doing a lot with his hair,
Yeah.
that I was not sure was working for him, but he gives such a natural performance, like it's very
Well, it's fun to
I,
see him in different versions of himself in this movie as well, too. So that's a lot
and
of fun.
that's got to be like a difficult thing to do, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuance there. There's a lot of range.
Yeah.
Uh, just I can't stress enough how good the performances are in this
Yeah.
movie. So
Yeah. Yeah. He's doing a fantastic job in this for sure.
uh,
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, saving my bacon again, and having a very good fun conversation. Um, I always enjoy having you on. So thank you.
I enjoy being on it. I think this was my like out of the MCU movies that I got to talk about. I think this might actually have been the one that I feel the most positively about.
I
Like
don't
I
know.
came
You
on
like
for like Iron
you
Man 2 and Dark World.
you were very positive about Dark World, whereas I was, poo
That's
pooing it
true.
left and right. So
Because I will kind of defend Dark World, and I'm
yes.
one of the only people that will. But this is a better one. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not insane. I like this one more than Dark World.
Good. Good. Yeah. That makes
Not
sense.
the first time I saw it, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
now.
Exactly. All right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at cat_voleur. That's VOLEUR. You can check out my website, catvoleur.com. I've got books, and it looks like I'm going to be at another convention coming up. I'm going to be at TBR Con, which is in Tennessee sometime.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Yeah, definitely go check out her stuff. Go check out her other podcasts and check out her books. I'm a big fan of her writing. Anybody who follows me knows I hype you up. So
which I appreciate.
Yeah. And we'll be having you on again probably soon to talk some more book talk. So
Yay.
That'll be a lot of fun. All right. Well, I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks again to Kat for joining me and saving my bacon once again. Next week, Violet Hammond returns to the show to talk about Sleepy Hollow and Sweeney Todd. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is a part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Please check out morbidlybeautiful.com/podcasts for more great shows. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Harper Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.